If we have issues, we should do it peacefully and not with guns. Too many families have been destroyed.
The LAPD's mounted unit and cycling unit were on hand to show their solidarity with the community.
I think this has been a really good event where everybody in the neighborhood's kind of gotten a chance to meet more people and know who your neighbors are, and that way hopefully you'll keep an eye out on each other over time.
Recalling a time when children were able to play outside without their parents worrying about them, or when women could walk home after dark without fear, residents say they're taking a stand against crime by getting involved and getting to know their neighbors.
When a community knows that we're watching over each other, that we're watching out for each other, it makes a difference for people who want to commit violence against us.
United in song and with one step in front of the other, these residents say their neighborhood belongs to them, not to gang members. Banning High School will be working with the LAPD to hold movies in the park events in the summer months on the school's football field so people can have something positive to do and get to know their neighbors. As you very well know, it's tax time, but before you file, Anna Marcos has some valuable information on a tax credit that will have you getting money back if you fall within a certain income bracket.
Each year, millions of dollars in federal money lies around unclaimed, money that could be yours. That's because one of every 5 LA County taxpayers fails to claim the Earned Income Tax Credit on tax returns, though many low-income residents qualify for it.
That represents somewhere around $1.2 billion in additional revenue, federal revenue that we could recapture here in the state of California. And if we recapture those revenues, we create 8,200 jobs.
So each year, city and state leaders launch an awareness campaign, the Greater Los Angeles Earned Income Tax Credit Campaign Partnership, to let people know they have free dollars coming, as well as free tax preparation at all LA Family Source centers for those who qualify.
The Earned Income Tax Credit, or the EITC, is just what it sounds like. It's earned. In tough economic times like this, it's more important than ever to help hardworking families stay above the water.
We are here to support you, to support yourself, and if that happens, our communities will indeed be better.
This is money in people's pockets. That's the way to look at this.
For families who make less than $50,000 a year with 3 or more children, the Earned Income Tax Credit can be as high as $5,700. Juan Diego walked home with more than $4,500 in tax credits.
My
wife passed away and I was the only earner in my family, but the program helped me recover more money. These are great programs for families. For more information on tax help centers in LA, go to www.freetaxhelpla.com. I'm Anna Marcos for LA This Week.
Turning to the world of entertainment, only one of the nominated movies in the Oscar Best Picture race was shot entirely in Hollywood. And as Anita Bennett tells us, city leaders recently honored that film for being a true artist.
It's a critically acclaimed movie about Hollywood's golden age, and now it's getting the red carpet treatment from Los Angeles city leaders.
I'm pleased right now as a member of the Los Angeles City Council and representing Hollywood along with Mr. Eric Garcetti to really call up here the master, the maestro, Michelle Hazanabidasag.
City Councilman Tom LaBonge recently honored the director of the silent film The Artist for shooting it entirely in Hollywood. Since the movie maker is from France, Councilman LaBonge enlisted one of his staffers who speaks fluent French to help present the award.
Alors, de la part de la ville de Los Angeles, on voudrait vous remettre ce premier prix, certificat, Made in Hollywood Award 2012, présenté par Councilman LaBonge.
Oui, oui. All right, good job.
The director beamed with pride as he showed off his council proclamation.
And actually, you are exactly where they tap dance for the final number. They did the final right here. So it's very touching.
But it wasn't just the director getting singled out. The entire cast was honored, with each one receiving their very own proclamation, including the film's canine co-star, Uggie the dog. Then it was time for the big moment. The team behind the artist was given the city's first ever Made in Hollywood award for shining a spotlight on Hollywood and for demonstrating true artistry. In Los Angeles, I'm Anita Bennett for LA This Week.
The artist is nominated for 10 Academy Awards, including, of course, Best Picture. The Academy Awards airs Sunday, February 26th. The city's controversial decision regarding impounding vehicles hits a roadblock. The blue butterflies at LAX continue to thrive, and animal services may be all bark, no bite when it comes to collecting unpaid fees. These stories and more in City Beat. The Los Angeles Police Commission had planned to relax its policy of towing and impounding vehicles driven by people without a valid driver's license. But the commission is now postponing that vote after a legal opinion from a state legislative body says local government does not have the authority to change the law. The commission's initial decision to change its towing policy was in response to complaints from immigrant rights groups that the policy targets undocumented workers who are unable to get a California driver's license. The 5-member police commission has rescheduled the vote on this issue later this month. The recently completed population count of the El Segundo blue butterfly, which have found a refuge in the 200-acre Dunes Habitat Preserve at Los Angeles International Airport, estimates the population of the endangered species to be between 120 to 126,000 that exist today. That's an increase of 8% over 2010. Back in 1976, there were fewer than 500. Los Angeles World Airports, the department that oversees LAX, worked with environmental experts to create the Dunes Habitat Restoration Project in 1986 to focus on reintroducing and protecting the coastal buckwheat plant, the butterfly's sole food source. The city librarian Martin Gomez is stepping down from the post he's held for 3 years to assume the post of vice dean of the University of Southern California Libraries in April. Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa issued a statement regarding Gomez's resignation as city librarian, calling Gomez's service to the Los Angeles Public Library outstanding. The most recent audit of LA Animal Services conducted by Los Angeles City Controller Wendy Gruhl reveals the department is plagued by lax controls and a lack of continuity in management, creating an environment with the potential to jeopardize animal safety. One finding reveals that the department failed to maintain a physical inventory of the animals under its care. Over the last 2 years alone, Gruhl says Animal Services also neglected to collect over $1.3 million in potential revenue from dog owners. In this week's list of things to do, a rare collection of Ansel Adams photos, an exhibit on the history of Los Angeles, and a safety safari at the zoo. Rare Ansel Adams photos of Los Angeles from Los Angeles Public Library's photo collection will be on view at Darkroom Gallery from now through March 17th. These photos include rare images of pre-war Los Angeles taken by Ansel Adams and donated by the photographer to the Los Angeles Public Library. Famous for his black and white landscapes, Adams shot more than 200 pictures of Los Angeles on assignment for Fortune magazine in 1940. The Darkroom Gallery is located at 727 South Spring Street, downtown. For more info on this exhibit or the gallery, go to drkrm.com. For more on LA's history, head on over to the Banning Museum to check out the permanent exhibit called Improbable Gateway, the Los Angeles Transportation Legacy. The exhibit tells the remarkable story of vision and perseverance of the individuals who would change 19th century Los Angeles from a desert surrounded by rugged mountain into an international gateway and center of commerce and influence. The Banning Museum is located at 401 East M Street in Wilmington. Go to banningmuseum.org for details. The Los Angeles Zoo and Radio Disney AM 1110 will host the second annual Safety Safari at the zoo from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Saturday, February 25th. Families can meet safety experts, take home safety tips, learn how to build an emergency kit, and much more. The Los Angeles Police Department will bring along a patrol car and motorcycle for youngsters to see up close. The zoo is located at 5333 Zoo Drive. Go to LA Zoo for more information. And remember, you can find this information on our Facebook page. And that's a look at some upcoming things to do. Valentine's Day isn't just for young people, but also for the young at heart. More than 500 seniors from 22 of the city's senior clubs and organizations attended an annual celebration hosted by Councilmember Jose Huizar. No corsages or dates necessary at this Valentine's-themed dance. Seniors who attended this 5th annual Eastside event, the Senior Snowball, held at Los Angeles Christian Presbyterian Church, enjoyed music, dancing, and good eats. The event, held for seniors living in Boyle Heights, El Sereno, and Northeast Los Angeles, is a way for Councilmember Jose Huizar to say thanks for all they've done to help improve the community.
Especially this generation. You know, we have people here who fought in the Second World War, who fought in the Korean War, and the Vietnam War, who did so much for this country. It's our way of saying thank you.
There was even a raffle for prizes like a blender, coffee maker, and griddle.
I like it. Very much I like it.
Music was provided by the popular Eastside band Chico, as well as by Strings and Voices, a senior musical group. And boy, did they get folks out on the dance floor.
I sing, I dance, I laugh, I talk to all the girls I know. I mean, I'm having a great time.
And Eleanor Aguilar's Valentine of 65 years was enjoying the ball right alongside her.
Oh, we have a lot of fun here. We get to meet all these people here. We hug and kiss.
A happy Valentine's indeed. That's going to do it for this edition. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ellen Chang. A reminder that you could catch us online at lacityview.org. You can also follow us on Facebook to check out stories you might have missed. We'll see you back here next week for more of LA This Week.
Almost 80% of car theft occurs because of unlocked doors. Locking your doors takes a matter of seconds and can become so routine that you may forget whether you locked your doors or not. But it's worth the effort to double check. The more successful thieves are at taking items out of a car, the more chances they are going to come back to that area. Don't let our town be that area. One simple precaution is to hide or cover any valuable items when leaving your car unattended. Simple actions like these can prevent you from becoming a victim of property theft. The Los Angeles Police Department would like you to remember, lock it or lose it.
G'day, Troy McCubbin from North Hollywood. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35, our city, our channel.
Good morning. I want to welcome everyone to today's council meeting. My name is Herb Wesson. I'm the president of the Los Angeles City Council. The council meets on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 10 a.m. You're all welcome. All of our meetings are open to the public. In fact, all of our committee meetings are open to the public as well. Mr. Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Yes, sir, we do.
Then would you please call the roll?
Absolutely. Alarcon, Buscaino, Cardenas, Englander, Garcetti, Weezer, Koretz, Krikorian, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Zine, Wesson. 10 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
First order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Labange moves, Mr. Krikorian seconds. Next.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Koretz moves, Mr. Garcetti seconds. At this point, Mr. Clerk, I believe it would be appropriate to go through the agenda. What do you think?
Absolutely, sir.
Let's take up the first 8 items.
Very good. Items 1 through 8 are items noticed for public hearing. We do have cards in for item number 1, sir.
Cards on 1. Specials, members. Items 1 through 8, specials. Then we'll open and close the public hearing. At this point, we should prepare to vote on the remaining items. So, Mr. Clerk, if you would, or Madam Clerk, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Mr. President, pardon me, sir. The ordinance was, unless they're reconsidered at a later time with 12 members, will go over for 1 week.
I understand that, but I am optimistic that we will have 12 members before this day is out.
As am I, sir.
So if you're optimistic, I'm doubly optimistic, okay? So why don't we go through the next set of items?
Very good. Items 9 through 14 are items for which public hearings have been held. There is a request from member to continue items 12 and 13 to February 29th.
Continue items 12 and 13 without objection. Mr. Garcetti?
10, please. Special.
Okay. Mr. Garcetti wants to call item 10 special. Mr. Parks?
Special.
Was that 14, Mr.
14,
Parks?
14 special.
Okay. Mr. Parks is calling 14 special. Any more? Okay, then on what's left, let's open the roll, Madam Clerk. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Okay. Next order of business, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, items 15 through 26 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, without objection, those items are now before us. Mr. Koretz, you jumped up quickly.
I would like to call 24 special for an amendment.
Okay. Are there any cards?
Mr. President, we have cards on items 15, 17, 18, 21, 22, and 23.
Okay, could you run that by me one more time? I have 15, 17.
18.
Okay.
21, 22, and 23.
Okay. Members, any other specials? Seeing none. On the remaining items, Madam Clerk, let us open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Mr. President, pardon me, there has been a request from a member to send item 15 forthwith, sir.
Without objection.
Mr. President, items 27 through 31 are items scheduled for closed session. Would you like to hold them on the desk?
What I'd like to do is hear from the Chair of Budget and Finance, Mr. Krikorian, if you could let us know what your fancy is on these items.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to discuss item number 27 in closed session. Items 28 through 31 were approved by the Budget and Finance Committee and could be voted on now.
Okay, so with the exception of item 27, we can vote on items 28 through 31?
Yes, sir. I should first read the recommendations into the record for each item.
Do we have any cards?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, then read the recommendations, please.
For item 28, in the case entitled Katayan Marabi versus City of Los Angeles, there is a recommendation to reject the plaintiff's offer of settlement.
Okay, let's open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 eyes.
Next.
For item 29, in the case entitled Jeffrey Zich versus City of Los Angeles, there is a recommendation to expend $650,000 in settlement.
Okay, on that item, let us open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 eyes.
Next.
For item 30, in the case entitled Petra Acupanda versus City of Los Angeles, there is a recommendation to expend $1.4 million in settlement.
Let us open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 eyes.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk.
Mr.
Clerk, on before we go to the next one, on item. Oh no, in fact, let's go the next one.
Item 31, in the case entitled Abascal et al. Versus FLLF, there is a recommendation to expend $112,500 in settlement.
Okay, on that item, Madam Clerk, let's open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
All right, on Mr. Clerk, on item 25, if we could send that forthwith.
Very good, sir.
At this time, we have 12 members. Why don't we take up all of the ordinances? Let's vote on can we reconsider, lump them together and vote one time on reconsideration?
Absolutely, sir. We'd first reconsider the matters and then bring them to the body for a vote.
So that's what we'll do now. So let's open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
Okay, now it's time to vote on the ordinances again. If we would open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
All right, where does that bring us now, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. President, that brings us to items called special or general public comment.
Mr. President.
Ms. Perry.
I wanted to reconsider item 16. Now that we have 12 members here.
Item 16?
Yes, please.
Okay, so let's open the roll on reconsideration on item 16. So let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
Okay, that item is reconsidered.
Okay. All right, so that's fine. We can take a vote now?
Yes. Yes, go right ahead. You ready to take a vote on it now? Okay, let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
Okay, thank you. Fourth with on that one per Ms. Perry. So let's go to public hearing at this time. So I'd like to call forward Dr. Tom Williams, Mr. Arnold Sachs, and Mr. John Walsh. If you guys would please make your way to the podium. In fact, I don't see Dr. Williams. Mr. Walsh or Mr. Sachs?
I'm always ready.
Mr. Walsh, since you're there...
I'm always ready. I don't spend 1 second of your time that I'm not ready. I will be arrested if I speak to Mr. Parks. Those are the rules. I just want to say, Mr. Parks, how happy we are to see you back. And incidentally, I hope you got our get well card. I'm not being sarcastic. I am not being sarcastic. And not a single word was mentioned about you at City Council. And I want to say, you made a smart move, Mr. Parks, When Herb Wesson sent you the box of candies, you didn't eat one because they were poisoned. We like parks. And I want to say there are knives out for you here on the city council. They're not white knives. They're not white knives. They're not Mexican knives. But we know what knives that are out. We are 100% behind you. And if you want to know what's happening in L.A. or the world, Hollywood Highlands, HIGHLANDS.org or Walsh Confidential. And I'd just like to say, Hollywood. We have little Ricky here. We had a triple rape in Hollywood on February 2nd on the Walk of Fame. Now, Mr. Garcetti was in New York raising money for his campaign. Triple rape. And incidentally, it happened at 2 a.m., and a crowd gathered, and they cheered on the rapist. Mr. Garcetti, he's eating and reading. You know, he's being... Now, is that true? Now, he's going to... I don't know nothing about no raping. I'm telling you right now, in the L.A. Times, the L.A. Times database, Hollywood is number 29 out of 209 districts in the county for crime. We have an enormous crime rate. And what is little Ricky doing? Collecting money. Triple rape on Yucca and Vine. HollywoodHighlands.org. Come to us to find out what happens to little Ricky.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Arnold Sachs. Hold one minute, Mr. Sachs.
Sorry,
Mr.
President.
Krikorian.
On item number 11, may that be sent forthwith, please?
Mr. Clerk, forthwith on item 11.
Absolutely.
Okay, welcome and good morning, Mr. Sachs.
Good morning, sir. Thank you very much. Yesterday's meeting, actually, Superman or Batman or whichever alias he's using had a pretty good point regarding your item on the agenda yesterday in the Building Equity and Growth in Neighborhoods Home Ownership Grant Program. Because he asked, how does he sign up? You have 10 spots. So how do you sign up for these 10 spots for low-income housing? What is the mechanism that the City Council has in place to allow a fair and equitable chance for all the citizens in the City of L.A. to get a chance at low-income housing? $72,000 to help with your mortgage payment for these 10 apartments. Now, in yesterday's Downtown News, or this week's Downtown News, they have a list of all these buildings that are going on downtown here, projects. 4 pages of projects. How many of these projects take part in this Building Equity and Growth Neighborhood Grant Program? How many more apartments are available? How many more places are available for ownership, for first-time ownership? And I seem to recall last year there was a little bit of a scandal in the Housing Authority where somebody who sat on the board, her 2 kids ended up in low-income housing because they were first-time buyers. So how do we prevent that from happening? And again, who qualifies? You know, the county spent $10 million on its Homeless in 50 program when it could have cost them $10 to get an all-day pass. They would have had 2,000 people that they could have fit into the program. So what, again, mechanism? How many people in this audience right now would qualify as low-income housing owners or want-to-be housing owners? I'll bet you there's quite a few. How do they sign up for one of these 10 slots, and how do they get approved? And what is, again, the mechanism? A lot of talk, a lot of BS.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sachs. If we could please keep it down. Okay, Michael, carry on. Zuma Dog and Matt Dowd, if you please come forward.
Thank you, Zuma Dog. And you could read everything I'm talking about and more at zumadog.com. Venice Beach performer, legend, icon, one of the new shirts. And I'd like to remind council again that October 2011, I beat the city in federal court. There was an injunction, and I won. The city owes me and Matt Dowd damages. The problem is that Tutanich, who's very kind of vindictive, he has retained Myers-Nave outside counsel. This will end up costing the city more out of the general fund to go to jury and appeal and drag this out than anything close to what me and Matt are asking for. There's a proposal settlement in Tutanic's office. I would suggest that you please ask him, can we see this settlement that Zuma Dog keeps talking about? Because I think he might be getting out of chambers forever if you simply settle for less money than you're going to be spending on outside counsel. Because I also heard that what happens is you hire outside counsel, and then the city attorney gets campaign contributions from that outside counsel. So then we might have quid pro quo going on as well. So this is something that needs to be investigated. Now also, some things that need to be addressed with Tutanich. Also, when you step in the front door, the violations start. You're not required to show ID to attend the LA City Council meeting. However, I'm told you are required to show ID to go through the lobby security check. I'm not a math genius. Why don't you tell me how you can enter the council meeting with no ID if you have to first enter City Hall with ID? Think about it. Also, the information you copy down in the books down there, is that public record for Zuma Dog? You've just spent years having people put down their personal address on these public comment cards. It's available online. You have violated people's rights.
Thank you, Mr. Zuma Dog. Michael. Welcome, my friend.
Good morning. Once again, my councilman's absent. Must be at Bring Back Broadway meeting. We had a meeting the other day in El Sereno about Valley Grade, taking out an old bridge that's there. They're proposing putting in a new park. Yet, they're not saying where the funds are going to come from to maintain that park. The trees are falling down in our community. Mr. Rosenthal has a memo from Urban Forest that says the city is liable because we are not pruning our trees in a proper manner, in a timely manner. The limbs are growing, overgrowing, falling and damaging cars. But once again, like a bunch of hypocrites, you don't pay damages. You found a loophole that says we didn't know that they were damaged. Well, I've got about 1,600 trees that I've already made you look at, and I'm going to get the rest of the million and have you look at, so you looked at every tree in the city. Last week, my councilman said that I raised my voice to his employees. I spoke with Arturo Gonzalez of Councilman Weezar's office, and this person does not know how to return calls. I don't raise my voice too often, but I am very persistent. And maybe somebody should give Arturo Gonzalez some depends, because he's crying like a little child. This is an adult business here. He should grow up if he's going to be here. My last comment is for Mr. Weezar. Either he suits up and shows up and starts working for the community, or he leaves office. And if he doesn't leave office or start doing his job, we're going to start protesting, getting him out of office. So out of courtesy, I'm asking him today, suit up and show up, do the job you and your staff are getting paid for, or start firing your staff, because we're going to fire you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Matt Dowd, Mr. Matt Dowd.
All right, thank you. Yes, still shouldn't be here after 6 years. We're performers from Venice Beach. If you haven't seen us before, I'm here with Zuma Dog. You've seen our performances, so there's no doubt we've had some great shows here. But Bill Rosendahl thinks it's a joke. He thinks everything with us is a joke, and that's testimony to how good we are as performers. But even Jose Weezar, he said he loves it. He gets all the humor, because that's the only way we get through. But the underlying vindictiveness and retaliation against us, so you're throwing money, they threw $100,000 at some other attorneys to fight us, because with all the 500 attorneys in the city, they were all beat. So why do you keep dragging it on? and going through the sideshows and the whole internet thing forever, all that stuff. We proved our damages. You know, we might have been offensive at times, but there's so many offensive things out there that you have to tolerate anyway in the city. If you look at the LA Weekly and all, you know, all these things that go on that people like Bill Rosendahl approve of and partake in probably. And that's okay, but I went to jail because I had a microphone. I got a ticket. I had to go to court because I had a mic stand at the beach. It was over 4 feet high. In Los Angeles, that's illegal. If you're a performer, you can get like vindicated and retaliated by the city and by the police. And it just gets worse for you guys because you lost your whole precious permit system, your whole way of tracking everybody got lost.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Williams, I saw you walk in. I called you earlier.
Thank you.
Good morning, Dr. Williams.
Good morning. Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council Board member and previous resident of a place called Aleppo. Has anyone ever heard of Aleppo or Halab? It was a great place. Everyone loved it, except for one thing. We had tanks in the street. We had armed soldiers going house to house searches. And what do we do now? Then the gentleman in charge of that country was known also as the Butcher of Hama. Now his son is the Butcher of Homs. People are dying now in Homs, in Halab, in Hama, in Damascus. What do we do about it? We listen to the radio, watch the TV, and commiserate that we can't do anything. But this city council has taken positions regarding other atrocities, and it would be nice to have them consider the city of Aleppo, Hama, and Homs, and Damascus, and try to encourage the U.S. government to do something about it, rather than letting it be like Bosnia. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Armanak Norajanian, and I believe the next person is Olga Hall. Olga Hall, please come forward. Good morning.
Good morning, City Council members. Good morning, fellow Angelinos. My name is Armanak Norajanian. I'm a liberal Democrat and human rights advocate. I proudly announced my candidacy to run for the seat of California State Assembly. I ran my election campaign on principles of social justice, racial integration, and technological revolution. I also waged a campaign against wasteful spending, narco-mafia, and organized crime. And I promised to raise taxes 50% against oil-producing corporations and gasoline-selling corporations in order to replenish state coffers, in order to increase spending on social programs. And actually, I believe that 49% of Angelinos voted for failed Proposition No last year. And actually still a large number of Californians will vote for raising taxes against wealthy individuals, 50%, and against rich oil and producing and gasoline selling corporations as well. Because nowadays, Governor Edmund Brown, he promises to only raise taxes in case that only 2%, 1 or 2%, insignificant amount, against was wealthy individuals and rich corporations. But it's not enough, because it won't cover the deficit, the budget deficit in this state. And I believe that in political fiscal responsibility, therefore we have to take a lion's share in order to replenish state coffers. And also promise closing down so-called medical marijuana dispensaries, as 56% of Californians voted to reject Proposition 19 2 years ago. as Proposition 19 was actually legalization of marijuana item. So that I believe I propose increased spending on building new rehabilitation centers for those substance abusers. And actually, I promise to ban those so-called medical marijuana dispensaries because I rip off Californians, rip off Angelinos. And I condemn City Ordinance 181-530 that legalized sales of marijuana in the city of Los Angeles. This city ordinance directly...
Thank you. Mr. Labange for a brief introduction, and Ms. Hall, if you could move forward.
Members and our guest here today, I want to introduce Nick Ut. 40 years ago, as a young photographer, Nikki, where are you? He took a picture in Cambodia, in Vietnam, where a young girl was running without clothes and a napalm bomb had just gone off in the back. That photograph that Nick took won him a Pulitzer Prize, but more important than that, it helped stop the Vietnam War. Just want to welcome Nick Ut, who's here today on assignment. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Welcome, sir. And many of us do remember that photograph. Ms. Hall? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. President and members of the Council. For most of my life, I have been opposed to the use of illegal drugs. Please pay attention, Council, including marijuana. But in the last years, I have been reading different information about it, and my views on it has changed completely, especially when I found out why it became illegal. DuPont, William Hearst, and several others demonized marijuana to get it out of the way. It was competition for their business. This is the reason it was criminalized. Marijuana has been used as medicine and to make clothing, rope, even food. It has a wide variety of uses, and for thousands of years it has been used by many cultures. Prohibition never kept people from drinking. They still found ways to drink, even if it was illegal. What Prohibition did was to create criminals like Al Capone and many others, the same that illegal marijuana is doing now. Illegal drugs kill more people by being illegal. Marijuana has to be legalized. We do not have the right to impose on others what they can use or not use. Marijuana can help many diseases, and it has to be decriminalized. The stigma of using it has to be erased so those that need it can use it. Sometime in your life, you or someone close and dear to you might need to use marijuana to soften the harsh effects of chemotherapy and other diseases. Compassion and empathy are needed now and should dictate your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. That concludes general public comment. Mr. Clerk, a request has been made to take item 18 out of order. So at this point in time, I'd like to call on Mr. Tony Cardenas to suggest how we move forward with this item.
Mr. President, for clarification, motion 18A has been distributed and is now before the body.
Okay, and Mr. Cardenas, let me remind you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I know you have a lot of cards there. We did have comment in the Public Safety Committee, and we did allow comment for every card that was submitted. But at this time, due to the interest of time, and Judge Nash and others need to get back to court and to the school board, et cetera, if we could have public comment at least 20 minutes, and then if we could go to 1 minute apiece so we can maximize the number of people.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, we want to do total of 20 minutes?
Total of 20 minutes, yes.
1 minute each, other than the first two speakers?
Yes, the first two speakers, if they could have more than 1 minute, because there are officials involved in the matter.
So the first two speakers will get 2 minutes, and we will start with Judge Michael Nash, followed by Monica Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. President. People, we just don't want people to be late to work.
Welcome, Judge.
Good morning, Mr. President and members of the City Council. I'm pleased to be here with you today to speak on behalf of this ordinance. This ordinance is the result of a collaboration amongst our juvenile court, the City of Los Angeles, represented by Council Member Cardenas' office, the Los Angeles Unified School District, the Los Angeles Police Department, and many representatives from our community who are here today. I believe that this ordinance is consistent with a policy that we've adopted in our informal juvenile and traffic courts, which deal with upwards of 100,000 youth and their families in our county every year. The ultimate goal is to encourage youth to go to school. And we think that our policy and this ordinance is designed to make school attendance a student issue, a family issue, a school issue, and a community issue, and not a criminal issue. So I thank you for your consideration of this, and thank you for listening to me today.
Thank you, Judge, for adjusting your calendar to be with us today. Monica, how are you? It's good to see you. Welcome.
Good to see you, sir. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Board of Education, I come to lend our support to this action. This is a great day for us to come together as adults who are committed to 100% graduation, and we know it's better for kids to be in class than being detained or cited. Help us. You all have already done great things. Attendance is up at the LAUSD. Citations are down. Our community partners, together with your leadership, can help us go a step further. We're here to say good job, and please approve this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I may mispronounce some of these names, but I would like to call up, and if you could come up in 3 people at a clip or at a time: Eric Mann, Manuel Cerrillo, Rashonda D.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Manuel Criollo. I'm the lead organizer with the Community Rights Campaign. One of the organizations that has worked very hard over the past 5 years to reverse the serious educational, civil, and human rights harms that tardy and truancy tickets have had caused on low-income communities of color, we strongly support Councilman Cardenas' motion to amend LAMC 4504. We believe that this amendment codifies many of the important negotiated agreements between us, LAPD, LASPD, that were secured over the past year, creating important protections for youth. And while our organization does not agree with the concept that city fines or court fees are a useful or effective method of dealing with more serious attendance and truancy issues among youth, we believe that Councilman Cardenas' proposal to lower fines and to create a cap on fines overall is in the right direction. And we'll continue to work with school officials and the court system to move to different alternatives. We encourage you to support this amendment. Let's make LA City a place to uphold civil rights and educational rights. Let's move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Rashonda D. and Eric Mann. Okay, now I want to call up Barbara Lott Holland, Cynthia Gonzalez, Alejandro Limas.
Hi, my name is Rashonda Duquesne.
Good.
I'm an organizer of the Community Rights Campaign, and I'm here today to speak on the Valley issues. I wanted to just say that if we criminalize our youth, what hope do we have for our future, right? Joe Barr is definitely on Golden Gates, and if students are put in this mode of feeling like, you know, they're criminals, what can we hope for our future? And I just want to encourage each and every one of you guys to just take that into consideration and to try to make our school environment a better one. Because students do want to go to school. They just want a more happy place to go. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, Barbara Lott Holland, Cynthia Gonzalez, Alejandra Lemus. Now, if you come up here quickly, you'll save some of
Okay,
your time.
well,
That's why I'm asking you to come up now.
My name is Barbara Lott Holland. I am an organizer with the Strategy Center's Community Rights Campaign. We have been at the forefront of this campaign for over 7 years. We started with surveying over 1,600 students within LAUSD who told us that they were having a problem with police stopping them and ticketing them on their way to school. These tickets, we feel, are a civil rights violation. It is the black and brown youth in our communities who have taken the brunt of these tickets and the treatment. And we are the ones that have to be at the end. During this 7-year course, we have done surveys. We have organized our communities. We have been in discussions with LASPD, LAPD, and have received directives from both of those to stop the ticketing of our black and brown students the first hour of school. We have also been working with Judge Nash on the attendance task force to improve the development and the attendance of our students. We are also pleased that the LAUSD School Board have also supported us in this motion. And we are hoping that this board will again approve.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Eric Mann, you called my name.
Yes, I did. Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you so much. My name is Eric Mann. I'm the director of the Labor Community Strategy Center. We're very pleased with Councilman Cardenas and all the other people who have introduced this motion. We feel that the original ordinance was cruel, racially discriminatory, and we're very happy it's going to be amended. There should be no fines for tardiness or truancy. No child or teenager should ever be arrested for walking down the street, whether on the way to school or on the way to McDonald's. In the enforcement of LAMC 5404, 88% of the students getting these tickets are black and Latino. We do not want students of any race to get truancy tickets. For the white students, it's an assault. But given the role of white supremacy in our society, it does not go to the core of their existence. But for the black and Latino students, this is a trauma of the most profound racial and racist impacts.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mann. Rosa Salache, Rosa Miranda, Jorge Lopez, please come forward.
Hello. My name is Cynthia Gonzalez, and I'm a 12th grader from Roosevelt High School and a youth organizer for the Community Rights Campaign. After many actions that students have taken with the Community Rights Campaign, holding several meetings and press conferences, I would like to highlight 2 important things today. LAPD was clear that they should not be the main force to address tardiness. LAPD was also put out a directive stating that they would not ticket students for the first hour of school. With this being said, we acknowledge the fact that LAPD has been taking progressive steps into easing the use of citation to address tardiness/truancy. However, we have reached a critical point in history with this motion. Our conversations have changed from being what is the role of officers in tardiness truancy, but how can we create a space for LAUSD to use tools that it has to not only get students back into schools, but keep them there. Truancy is a school-based issue and not a policing issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I'm looking for Rosa Salache, Rosa Miranda, and Jorge Lopez. And sir, you are?
Nabil Romero from the Community Rights Campaign.
Okay.
I am a Roybal Learning Center, class of 2011 graduate. We are gathered once again to take one of the final steps to help eradicate the school-to-prison pipeline from Alpino/educational system. In March of 2011, as a senior, I was detained as I entered school at 9 a.m. and was issued a citation on school grounds for being quote-unquote truant. I had to miss valuable class time and my mother necessary work hours after being found guilty for quote-unquote truancy. A $340 fine was laid upon me and my mother for court fees, etc. I asked myself, how can this law help keep kids in school when it acts as a deterrent? Because who in their right mind would want to risk being late to school for any acceptable reason to be ticketed? I can tell you from personal experience, this law does nothing but decrease attendance and consequently graduation rates. We are students and are but a mute body, and are calling out for you, the council members, to speak out and be our voice. We want more diplomas, not more convictions. Don't let the leaders of tomorrow be treated as criminals today.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Rosa Lacha, and I'm a junior at Roosevelt Senior High School and a member of the Community Rights Campaign. On March 2009, I was fined and ticketed over $250 for being truant to school, which I was not. I was late to school no more than 15 minutes due to public transportation issues. As I rushed to school, 2 police officers awaited me. They asked me, "Where are you going?" I precisely said, "To school, of course." They responded and said, "No, you're not." LAPD, I find it ironic that truancy tickets are used as a tool to get students to go to school. Yet that day, when I was already at the front of my door of my school, you drove me and over 30 of my peers away from our school and our education. You ticketed me without asking why I was late. Yes, yet I was still late several other days after that because the condition of public transportation did not change. Especially since my mother couldn't take me to school since she has to work those extra hours to pay that fine, which she still hasn't paid. You didn't teach me a lesson about getting to school on time. Honestly, I felt this law taught me a lesson of what it means to have my civil rights taken away. I am one of the many LAUSD students living below the poverty line, so why ticket us? Why fine us when we can't pay? Why criminalize us oppose us to help us?
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon. My name is Laura Fair, and I'm the Education Rights Director for Public Counsel. We've represented numerous young people who have been ticketed, arrested, and handcuffed as they're trying to get to school. And we've seen firsthand that missing more school to go to court and to face a fine beyond their family's means just makes it more likely the student will stay home next time. We've represented young people who are trying to get jobs and move forward, but they are stopped because of thousands of dollars in accumulated fines that they cannot pay, and now an outstanding warrant that blocks them from opportunities at every path. The research is clear. Curfew fines and court time don't bring students back to the classroom. In fact, the studies show that students who get caught up in court are 3 times more likely to drop out. This motion represents a common sense solution that prioritizes court-ordered services that actually address the root causes of truancy rather than a $250 fine, which is not supported by evidence. The solution is more resources and supports for our students and families that struggle the most. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ask for your vote and support.
Next.
Hello, my name is Jorge Lopez. I'm a teacher at Roosevelt High School, and as a teacher there, I have witnessed dozens and dozens of my students who have came to me who have been ticketed, and many of my students have made many times the decision not to come to school in fear of being ticketed. It's common sense to amend this daytime curfew law, because in our school it's going to create a caring environment, not a culture of fear, where our school facilities are going to be used as ticketing zones. So I'm very much in support of this, and I commend your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is David Sapp. I'm a staff attorney at the ACLU of Southern California.
Wait a minute. I did not call your name, though. So you guys just can't jump in line when I call names. So I want no disrespect to you, but we want to afford the people that filled out the cards, give them the first opportunity. So I'm looking for Judy Redmond, Zoe Rawson, and David Chavez. And who's behind you, sir? Are these one of the people that I called earlier? Hurry up.
Morning, my name is
time.
Zoe Rawson. I'm a legal advocate
Yes.
with the Community Rights Campaign. I'm also an attorney. I've represented close to 60 students that have been cited under the daytime curfew. I'm working with students that are cited for the first time, searched, handcuffed, and cited for the first time. I'm working with students that have fines upwards of thousands of dollars. In my experience, students that were cited multiple times, it happened during a period of instability in their lives. These students are our foster youth, our homeless youth, children from families with economic hardships, and sudden unemployment. Councilmember Cardenas, we are greatly appreciative of your commitment. Our public school students policing is part of their daily experience, including those most in need of positive supports. These amendments are necessary. While I disagree that fines are an appropriate penalty, these amendments are necessary. We urge you to vote yes. And we urge you to take action that takes into account the reality of our...
Thank you. I'm looking now for Judy Redmond. Please come forward.
My name is Judy Redmond. I want to give my time to David.
We normally don't do that, but we will, since he looked nice in his suit, we'll let him come on back up. How are you, David?
I'm doing well, thank you. The critical changes of this motion will establish Los Angeles as a national leader in working constructively with schools to get students in school and keep them on track to graduate. I want to talk about one thing, which is about the fines that will be addressed through this motion. 2 points in particular. One, there is not a single study that supports the proposition that fining students related to tardies or absences actually improves attendance. And second, there's considerable research that shows that having police and heavy enforcement in and around schools is actually likely to push away students who are disengaging from school so that they're more likely to drop out and not complete their graduation requirements. All this research is summarized in a study that our offices published about 2 weeks ago, and we urge you to vote yes on this important motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that Mr. Sanchez? Is that David Sanchez behind you? Are you Mr. Sanchez?
I wrote Chavez. It's Chavez, David Chavez.
Oh, my bad.
All right, sir. So I have some gifts here for y'all as council. We made some Valentine's cards for you. These are from the Youth Justice Coalition. So folks can come and collect it. I don't know what the sergeant at arms is. All right, thank you very much, sir. So please enjoy those Valentine cards that we're giving you all. What we're trying to tell you all today, again, my name is David Chavez. I'm with the Youth Justice Coalition. I'm an organizer. And we're definitely out today to say that you all need to start loving the youth. Show some love. Don't be handing us handcuffs. Hand us some diplomas. Hand us some support. And yes, the YJC is definitely in support of the modification of Municipal Code 4504. And I just want to say that definitely these truancy tickets are an example of the over and hyper policing that already exists in the city of Los Angeles. It's not something that's just limited to our schools, but it's citywide. Because nearly half of the budget here for LA City goes towards locking people up. And I think that's a really big problem. We need to start investing in our youth, not sending them down the school to prison pipeline. Start using that money to go towards art projects, things like that.
Thank you. I think it's Laura Fern, Susan K. Lee, David Sapp. Please come forward.
Good morning, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Susan Lee. I am the Director of Urban Peace at the Advancement Project. We are a policy change organization working to close the opportunity gap so that every community can have health, safety, and opportunities to thrive. I come before you today to urge you to pass the proposed amendment and to applaud the leadership of Councilmember Cardenas and Councilmember Parks. As you know, the Advancement Project has been working closely with the city on community safety over the past 6 years. Having engaged more than 5,000 individuals throughout the city through our community violence assessments, we know that youth in some of LA's communities, particularly places where violence and gangs are entrenched, face great challenges in going to and succeeding in school. Youth often tell us that they are afraid to walk to school because of fear of bullying, intimidation, and other types of gang activity. Youth in these communities also tell us of the hardships at home where they may have responsibilities for younger siblings while their parents try to hold down 2, 3, 4 jobs. Youth also talk about trauma.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. I'm looking for Laura Fern, maybe, and David Sapp. Oh, that's you, David. All right. Hi.
Good morning. I know we're probably a little out of order here, but my name is Maisie Chen, and I'm the executive director and co-founder of Cadre, a parent organization in South Los Angeles. And we have a parent here who wants to speak passionately about this issue, urging you to vote yes.
Hi, my name is Eddie Madison, and I'm a core parent with Cadre. We represent the parents here in South LA, and we're also part of the Dignity in School campaign, which seeks to push schools to use positive behavior support and alternatives to harsh discipline and zero tolerance. As you know, harsh discipline mostly affects the African American males, and I'm a father of 3 African American males, so of course this issue hits truly home for me. Zero tolerance is like issuing Similar practice to zero tolerance, like issuing truancy tickets to kids who are actually on their way to schools, are forms of push out. We feel that student pushing out happens when people who's involved in the school setting, whether it's on their way to school or away from the school, is not a positive way for our children. So we're asking you to stop. We're asking you to we're urging City Council members to amend 4504.
Thank you. Now I need Michelle Newell, Tanisha Denard. Michelle Newell, Tanisha Denard. Are you here, Tanisha? Then come right behind. Okay, Ms. Newell.
Hi, I'm Michelle Newell. I'm here with the Children's Defense Fund, and we are a proud member of the Dignity in Schools Campaign LA chapter, as well as Judge Nash's School Attendance Task Force. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. The Children's Defense Fund is fighting to end the cradle-to-prison pipeline that funnels too many of our youth away from the education they deserve and into the juvenile and criminal justice systems. In LA, our policies of education, including ticketing for truancy, have been contributing to this high criminal system involvement. LA County has the largest juvenile justice system in the country. Filling our halls and our camps are young men and women who are grade levels behind in school, who have high rates of learning disabilities, who have a history of poor school attendance, and who have high rates of trauma and unmet mental health needs. These young people in our juvenile justice system needed resources and support, not tickets and police. If we had invested in them as we should have, we would have more students graduating and less students locked up. This amendment is an opportunity to take a step forward in reprioritizing education and supporting young people. Thank you for your leadership on this.
Thank you. Mr. Cardenas, the 20 minutes are up, but I'm going to let Tanisha close this out.
Good morning. My name is Tanisha. I'm with the Youth Justice Coalition. I hope y'all like y'all cards because I spent a lot of time making it. So I was a suspect. I was a suspect of truancy tickets, and I can tell you with a straight face that has been nothing but a push out. I was ticketed several times without any resource or alternative to the ticket. I felt like it was not college prep but prison prep, showing kids how to get a ticket for simply being late, not showing them a faster way to college. With that said, I hope that our words are more than time on your check and a sound in this room. I hope it's something you plan on putting into our future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The remaining, and Tanisha, let me thank you very much. I do enjoy my card, and I could tell that you put work in it. So I'm very appreciative, and I'm sure the other members are as well. For those of you that were here to speak and didn't get to speak, these cards will be put into the record, so your name will go on file that you were here to speak on this issue. With that, I'm going to turn this back over to Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you very much.
Continue.
Thank you very much, Council President. Thank you, young people, for the love you're giving all of us council members. Really appreciate it. But understand this amendment of 4504 comes with some tough love, as I'll explain in a second, and then we're going to have Assistant Deputy Chief Villegas up to speak on behalf of the police department as well. But I believe that the council as a whole and the community as a whole and everybody who's been involved are going to be happy with the actions of the council today. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to publicly thank Judge Nash, who's been extremely involved in this and actually was the impetus to pull all the parties together and have meeting after meeting after meeting of progress on how we can arrive at this day and the changes that will come in the future. So once again, Judge Nash, thank you so much for your leadership. Truancy is a very important issue because school attendance rates are directly tied to school success and a proven factor in reducing crime. In Los Angeles, truancy tickets have impacted tens of thousands of students, and according to the LAPD report that the school and school police statistic, officers issued more than 47,000 tickets to students between 2004 and 2009. And during that same period of time, the truancy rate increased from 5% to more than 28%, according to the California Department of Education, with curfew fines often ballooning to up to more than $800 and requiring students and their families to miss additional time from school and work to go to court to resolve them. Revising our current municipal code 4504 would substantially increase school attendance and prevent a considerable number of students from entering into the juvenile justice system. I think it's important for us to understand that what we're doing here is we're requiring, and with the cooperation, already the commitment of our school district and of our courts and also the police departments, both school police and LAPD, we have an agreement and a commitment that this change today will be followed through with adult attention to our young people when they are late. That's the main thing that we need to understand. We're going from a purely punitive model to a restorative justice model where the adults, be it a counselor, be it a teacher, cooperating with the courts, communicating with the courts, and also making sure that our LAPD officers know that when they do give a citation, there's going to be follow-through, and adults are going to handle their business and make sure that these young people are helped back into class. That's what we're doing today. The amended ordinance would give students community service for the first and second violation and a base fine. I say base fine because it only starts at $20 on the third occurrence. However, what I have here with me is a chart that shows that with the mandatory and optional court fees, that $20 on that offense could grow as much as $155. And that's what these families have been faced with. With the base $250 fine on the first occurrence, we've had some families fined over $1,000 because their kid was 5 or 10 or 15 minutes late to school. So, and also with this ordinance, we are going to be giving the discretion of the officers to talk to those young people and ask them why they're late. And if they are in the direction of school, or if they're in the vicinity of their school, then the officer will be telling them, continue to go to school, instead of saying, we need to get into the vehicle and we're going elsewhere. That is the difference between the ordinance as it stands today and the ordinance as if we are successful today, and I hope and expect we will be, to create an ordinance that is actually restorative and not purely punitive. So with that, on behalf of the LAPD of Los Angeles, we have Assistant Chief Villegas, and I would like him to say a few words on behalf of the police department as to where they stand on this change.
It's actually Deputy Chief, and I'm George Villegas. I'm the Commanding Officer of Operations Valley Bureau. Prior to that assignment, I was assigned to the Office of Operations as a commander. And for the past 18 months, we've been working with many of the community organizers that spoke earlier, as well as the ACLU and the Public Defense Fund, to come up with a system or a strategy by way in which we do our job as it relates to law enforcement. And in this case, it's to prevent juveniles from becoming victims of crime and to prevent juveniles from committing crimes. We're not necessarily in the business of truancy enforcement. That truancy is an issue that must be dealt with by the school district. So understanding what our different roles were, we came up with some amendments, and we published an operations order that specifically addressed ensuring that the spirit of what the Los Angeles Police Department is to do, and that is to prevent juveniles from becoming victims of crime and or participating in crime, is to ensure that this curfew ordinance is used by us as one means by which we reduce crime, not as the sole purpose of addressing crime. So having said that, we've been working with them to draft these changes. We're conceptually supportive of these changes, and I can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. We're going to go back to Mr. Huizar. Excuse me.
Cardenas.
I know that. I just saw that Mr. Huizar is on the queue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. When it comes to the amending motion 18A that we have before us today, again, I want to thank the police department for working with my office, working with the city attorney's office, et cetera, and arriving where we're at today. But one thing that I want to make abundantly clear, ladies and gentlemen, with that violation comes the student needs to participate in community service or appropriate community and or school-based program mentoring and or counseling, and also can do as much as 20 hours of required community service on top of that counseling as well. Again, ladies and gentlemen, what we're trying to do here is make sure that we don't just look at it as a punishment opportunity, but an actually growth opportunity for the school members of the school district, the adults in the school district, to actually work with those pupils as they were commanded to do and what they come to work to do, instead of just looking at it as a purely punitive model. And one of the things that I'd like to thank Judge Nash is that even with this change, his courts are still going to be overburdened with many young people that his juvenile courts are having to see, and this is going to be something that brings the right kind of restorative justice and the right kind of relief to all parties involved. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I think the key for us when we were having discussions was the actual school-based program mentoring and the actual resources. And I think that's the key for us in terms of helping kids stay away from, or actually stay in school, because the more often that they're in school, the less likely they are to either become victims of crime or to be participants in crime.
Chief, thank you. And Mr. Cardenas, thank you for your great leadership on this. I'd like to call up Mr. Englander now.
Yes. I want to thank Councilman Cardenas for bringing this critically important legislation to the table and working so hard to bring so many together on this. This is something that I think the kids that have been involved in this, the students, will remember for the rest of their lives. That this is not only the ultimate lesson in civic participation, but affecting what's going to happen to so many youth and so many children for so many years. So I want to thank them that turned out today. I want to thank the ones that have been involved that couldn't make it today, because this is extremely significant. And with that, I want to say this also isn't complicated, that we need kids, we need our children in classrooms and not courtrooms, that we need to make sure that we have these programs working with LAPD. I'd also like to thank the Los Angeles Police Department for working so hard to look for solutions, for working with the youth, for working with all the organizations to bring a common sense solution to the table. And I think this is one of those rare times where so many people have come together looking for a common sense solution. We've been able to find that. So I'd also like to thank the parents for not only their support of the youth, of our children, and working with the schools, but kids have a hard time now, harder than ever, quite frankly. And without the support of the parents, they can't make it. And so the parents that have been there helping and working with their children, working with the schools, I want to make sure that they get the thanks and support as well. And the last thing is, you know, it's a rare time that we get the opportunity where we can affect so many lives, particularly children, youth throughout the city of Los Angeles for so many years, with the simple wave of a pen, simply signing a signature on an ordinance. It's so rare where you can see that impact, affect so many young people for decades to come. And this is long overdue. And so I want to thank Councilman Cardenas for working with the coalitions, for working with the schools, for working with the teachers and the parents to come up with a common sense solution, and then finally working with LAPD in implementing something that makes sense. You have my full support and appreciation for bringing this to the table. And I urge everybody's aye vote on this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Koretz, Paul Koretz of the 5th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank the community for this huge turnout. We definitely have heard you, we definitely have seen you, and we appreciate all of you coming out. I also appreciate Monica Garcia coming out on behalf of the school board. I think we all agree there's no tougher job probably in America than running the LAUSD. It's a huge district, it's a difficult district, it's like having a tiger by the tail. And we have a rare opportunity to help LAUSD do its job and help our students at the same time by ending a counterproductive policy, and one that ironically is a truancy policy that actually makes it more difficult for students to be in school. It's about time we change this. I thank Mr. Cardenas for his work in making this happen, and like the previous speakers, I urge an aye vote.
Thank you. Mr. Zine of the 3rd District.
Well, thank you, and great photo. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'd like to call Judge Nash up, if I could, please. Judge Nash. Let's hear it for Judge Nash, the man who wants to save our system and the students. Judge, your perspective, and I've known you for a long time, and you've been on the bench for a couple centuries, I should say decades. Your perspective on this, as you've been dealing with this issue for so many years, your perspective.
Well, bottom line is it's an important issue. It's an important issue for our kids. It's an important issue for our communities. There is no magic bullet, or there is no magic solution that's going to cure all the school attendance issues, but we do have an active task force that's making progress, and if you haven't seen our report, I'll be happy to send it to you. And this is just one response on one of the issues that we've seen, and hopefully it will help to make a difference.
And one issue that came up was the fine, and I know that in the criminal justice system you have not the tax but the penalty assessment. So if the fine is, say, $100, after they add all the assessments, it could be up to $500?
Or more.
Or more.
And it's really difficult for kids to pay that fine. It certainly puts a strain on families, and it really creates a system that's more designed to help people fail than to help people succeed. And so we need to change that.
And as far as the school police, we have the LA Unified School Police, the LAPD. I don't know how many resources of the police department are involved in this, for the school police. Will this apply to both LA Unified School Police and Los Angeles Police Department for the chief?
Yes.
I believe it should.
Yes, and of course, our courts will be have implemented our policy, which applies to all law enforcement agencies throughout Southern California that interface with our courts.
So if someone's on a border jurisdiction, Beverly Hills or Culver City, a student at LA Unified, the same rules would apply.
Exactly. If a youth is ticketed for being late to school, I don't care what law enforcement agency does it, we're going to dismiss that ticket.
Okay, and the issue of on their way to school and they're late for whatever reason, or the habitual that continually don't want to go to school, how are we going to handle that, the difference between those two?
Well, you know, that's a bigger issue, and this isn't necessarily going to fix that, but you know, that's one of the issues that we need to consider in our task force and look at all the approaches that have been utilized elsewhere, that are being utilized in this county, that have been successful in working with those kids, and hopefully encourage all school districts to adopt these positive approaches.
Because the current system obviously is not proven effective. This is an improvement over what we currently have.
Well, thus far. And of course, my concern is in our juvenile courts, we work with over 150,000 youth and their families every year. And this task force is designed to also help our courts develop positive approaches to working with these kids and their families.
And while we look at our schools,
Zine.
one more question. While we look at our schools for education, the students here get an education today, as most of them have probably never been to a council meeting, but they're seeing how the process changes through the system of the political spectrum.
Well, I hope we're sending a good message to these young people here today, because we're here today because we've heard their voices.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Zine. Mr. Reyes.
Thank you. I stand to support this effort. I want to thank my colleague, Councilman Cardenas, for his labor. This is another layer of work he's demonstrated in working with Judge Nash and other issues regarding our youth and advancing their environment and making it much more productive to be part of this learning experience. I thank you, Judge, for that.
Thank you.
You know, colleagues, in my district, I have 6 new high schools. I have the Performing Arts, the Sotomayor High School in Cypress Park, Miguel Contreras, West Adams Academy, and Ed Roybal Learning Academy. All these are new high schools that emerged in the past 5-6 years. We're talking about close to 12,000 students. This is not even including the charter schools that are out there. So this truly impacts a large segment of my district, if not the city. What's also crucial to me, I have one of my sons is a 10th grader, another one is a senior in a public high school. So I know it'll impact them as well. But I think what's key here is understanding the discretion, that understanding that our youth will at times find themselves late. But Judge, the question to you is, we're still vulnerable to the subjectivity and the temperament of any officer who sees a youngster coming in and out of school within this envelope. They still have that discretion to give tickets. This doesn't create that solid buffer, right? I mean, I want to make very clear what this does and doesn't do.
Of course, that's always the case. It is the job of the police department to enforce the law, and I know that they do a darn good job of that, and they operate in good faith, and sometimes, just like everybody else, they may not always be right. But that's why we have courts, that's why we have supervision, that's why we have community oversight.
So ultimately, the test of getting there on time is crucial, but also the ability to understand our rights is just as significant. So I think it's very important that we underline that fact. But this truly provides a less mean-spirited environment that allows an environment that will allow the youngsters not to be as penalized.
I'm a product of Los Angeles city schools. And back in my day, a few centuries ago, this wasn't a court issue. This was a school, student, family issue, and we want to return to those days.
Great. So in closing, colleagues, I just want to thank again Councilman Cardenas for his hard work, Judge Nash for everything you've done, and the youngsters that are here, thank you for being here. This is your house. These are your tax dollars at work. So thank you for making sure you're part of the process and the solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Judge, for stepping up and telling it like it is. Will the students all stand up in the room so we can see you all? Thank you for being here. This is your hall, just like it's everybody else's hall. And by you coming here to express yourself in the democracy that we have today is gratifying to me. Thank you all for being here. Tony, I got an email from all kinds of people and Facebooks, and this is one from Harrison Wills. Are you in the room here, Harrison Wills? Well, I've been getting hundreds of these from students all over the place, clearly pointing out that this particular law makes no sense. And if I could just recap a little of this, right now, if you get ticketed, you could pay $1,075 for that ticket. And as Mr. Cardenas in his chart puts here, it would go down to $155. So right there, it's a dramatic decrease. But, officer, how do we avoid even giving a ticket? How many minutes do we wait? Is it a half an hour? You know, people have hardship situations at home. They miss the bus. Something happened between the mother or the brother or this or that, and you get in late. So how much is late when you start using whatever law we have in place?
Well, I think that the issue really is the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law. That's the first and foremost. The second issue is what is our responsibility and how is it that we manage and lead our personnel to ensure that we're enforcing the curfew law within the spirit of what it's intended. And again, you go back to the point in terms of us identifying that the reason we enforce this law is to prevent juveniles from being victims of crimes and or to prevent juveniles from being participants in crime. So as such, when we do our crime analysis and we determine where the clusters of crime are occurring, that's where we deploy our resources. Generally, they're not necessarily deployed specifically in and around schools. But there are times when there are juveniles who are in school that intentionally leave school and they're leaving and walking in the opposite direction of school, and you're within a block or two of that school district. So we've adopted a philosophy by which we're going to ensure that our officers are conducting investigations such that they're asking these types of questions to determine whether in fact somebody is late and walking or driving or taking public transportation towards school versus away from school. It's difficult to identify each individual circumstance and situation to answer your question, but moreover, to have an assurity that the Los Angeles Police Department is working within the spirit of this curfew ordinance and is going to be enforcing it.
What do you think of the
Thank you,
proposed
Mr.
Cardenas?
Rosendahl.
Okay.
Your time is expired.
What do you think of that?
Think of which part, sir?
Cardenas's.
Well, I'm here in support of it.
Okay.
I think conceptually we're moving in the right direction.
Okay.
The issue really is that the Los Angeles Police Department is not in the business of truancy enforcement, and I think that that's what the big misnomer is. We're enforce this curfew law to specifically address crime and crime prevention issues in and around the rest of the city.
Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the police department, to the judge, and to, as usual, Mr. Cardenas has not only done his homework, he's built the coalition, and I want to thank all the community activists that are here, and our students especially, who've taken time to be here today. You know, when we launched a few years ago something called At the Park After Dark, which has become Summer Night Lights, I remember when we had a press conference that first night announcing that we were going to keep a park open until midnight, and a 14-year-old student came up to me and he said, "Can I speak at this press conference?" And he was about this tall, and I said, any 14-year-old brave enough to come to the council member and speak? I said, "Go ahead." The first words out of his mouth were, "I'm a tagger." And I went, "Oh no." But he said, "But before tonight, you know, I used to tag people's garage doors. I didn't like doing that, but before tonight, nobody had ever given me a canvas." And I saw a young person who might have continued being a tagger illegally, who would have gone on to maybe being a member of a gang in the area in Glassell Park where we were, and maybe take a different route in his life, that night be reborn as an artist with something to say, a young person with a message. And I think today, while you all hear of my grandfather, who came over the border from Mexico in his mother's arms during the Mexican Revolution and settled in Boyle Heights, he was a classic at-risk youth and was a truant, to the point where he got kicked out and never was able to finish junior high school. It took him probably 20 years to get his life back. He told me a story when I was a young man of an African American who was on the television, who he said, "I know him," and I asked him, "Who's that?" He said, "Well, that's the mayor, Tom Bradley." I was about 6 years old. And I asked him, "How do you know the mayor, Grandpa?" I was really impressed. And he said, "Well, he arrested me when I was a young man for being out of school." So maybe because of that, his life turned around a little bit. But what we need to do is realize that truancy is not just a choice made by a student. Sometimes it is, and we have to address that. But it's a reflection of a society. It's a reflection of a context of whether somebody's a foster youth or homeless, whether they had a night where they heard parents arguing and domestic violence in their home, whether it is a reflection of the pressures of the gang membership that are around them, and figure out how we intervene instead of condemning somebody to a pathway in which they get worse and worse and worse, instead of better and better. So thank you, Mr. Cardenas, for taking us down that path. Thank you for the young people. We do want people to stay in school, but that takes all of us coming together. And I think our police department, which has turned a page in community policing and constitutional policing, together with an informed judiciary, can be the beginning of something not just for here, but I'm reading how Provo, Utah, and other places want to now continue to criminalize truancy. Let us be pushing that fight backwards and be from Los Angeles, a wave that crashes across this nation, to make sure that we intervene in young people's lives and truly take them from being truants to real members of the society, and you all have proven that today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a sad fact that my district ranks #2 in the city when it comes to truancies. And I wanted to commend Councilmember Cardenas, the police department, the judge, school district, community-based organizations, the students and schools for coming together to address this issue. As a senior lead officer, I know the issue of truancy. I've worked it, I've addressed it, and as senior lead officers, we need to get to the root cause of the problem. And we just can't ticket our way out of the problem when it comes to truancies. What this amendment does, it brings schools, parents, and students together to get to that root cause of the problem, why they're late or why they're skipping school. So I congratulate Councilmember Cardenas and Councilmember Rosendahl. You asked, I wanted to ask that same question, or actually acknowledge those students who are here. And one of the reasons why I started, one of the reasons why I started down at the Harbor area, the Teen CPAB, Teen Community Police Advisory Board, is because oftentimes as the police department, we lend a deaf ear to teenagers. And I've often said, when teenagers speak, people listen. So you coming together, especially the students, we are proud of your efforts, and we're proud of the fact that you're involved, you're engaged in local government, and I can attest to the fact that some kids out there just don't have that love guidance at home, and we need these types of measures in place to address the issue of truancy, and that's why I'm standing in support of it. And with that,
I also support Councilmember Cardenas. Thanks, Chief Villegas, for your guidance and leadership in this issue. Judge Nash as well. And part of the problem, and oftentimes down at the harbor, we've had numerous truancy task forces, and working with the courts, it just didn't solve the problem. All we did was flooded the court system, but we didn't talk about why the kids were skipping school. So again, what this amendment does is allows us to bring the students, parents, and the school administrators together at the table and problem solve. So thank you very much, and I too ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Alarcon.
Council members, when I was a state senator, I remember having a conversation with Governor Davis, and he said, "Richard, what would you do for schools?" And I said, "The first thing is more school." And it was always ironic to me that we do things to push kids out of school, and the most fundamental problem that we have with our school system is that this state is 48th in the nation in terms of how much we invest in our kids. We spend $9 a day on these kids, and I think they're worth a lot more than that. We have so many districts. We have so many districts across the nation that are spending double and triple that amount, giving high-tech quality education to their kids day in and day out, when we struggle and try to provide minimal resources to some schools in our neighborhoods. I don't blame the school board for the challenges that they face. They are underfunded. In fact, that is a crime in the state of California, the level of funding that we provide to our students. So it isn't unusual that in a system that pays $9 a day for students, that some students say, "I don't want to go to school because it's not providing me what I need in education." That's the bigger issue. The bigger issue is, how are we going to provide more education to our kids when it's only $9 a day? We need to do better than that as a state. At the same time, I remember, I know you'll find this hard to believe, but I was suspended once when I was in high school, and it's interesting because I was suspended for yelling at an administrator. I know you find that even more difficult to believe. But I went home and I watched TV for 2 days, and even back then, at 17 years old, I thought, what a dumb use of time. Why do we suspend kids and send them home to watch TV? How is that good for them? And that's what I meant when I told the governor more school. Instead of suspending them to go home, we ought to give them more homework. We ought to give them more schoolwork. We ought to tutor them. We have to inspire them to be more involved in their education. Well, similarly, when it comes to punitive actions, criminal actions, with regard to tardiness and with regard to being absent from school, I mean, that takes it into an arena that creates more problems than good. The fact is, we don't need to send these kids to court. We need to send them to school. And that's exactly what is going on here today. So I want to commend Councilman Cardenas for his leadership, but most importantly, I want to thank the coalition for coming together and the police department for understanding. Back when I used to write police exams for the city of Los Angeles, I remember the very first thing out of the police manual was, "We are not here to solve the social ills of society. We are here but to enforce the law." Chief Villegas, let me tell you that when you speak in a whole different culture than where our police department was 20 years ago, because you understand that those social ills can be corrected by the police department advocating for better services for, in this case, our kids. So I want to thank the police department especially, and Judge Nash, for your leadership on this.
Thank you.
You see it in the court. It's unnecessary. Let's move this thing forward and send a message to the rest of California.
Thank you. Mr. Huizar. Mr. Huizar.
Thank you, Mr. President. And first, I want to thank and commend Judge Nash for not only being here today and advocating for our youth, but for the work you do each and every day in our court system. And it was a pleasure serving with you as co-chairs of the Education Coordinating Council, where we work to improve the educational outcomes for probationary youth and foster children. So you not only do your job as a judge, but you actually do a lot of work outside of that courtroom to improve the lives of youth. So thank you so much. And Mr. Cardenas, you've always been a strong advocate for our young people, and I know you feel passionately about this. And this is one of those where he looked at it and said it could be better. We don't have to be punitive with young people who are attempting to get an education, who sometimes we don't understand how difficult we made it at times for them to get that education. As Mr. Alarcon mentioned, the harsher and harsher realities of the state of California and the cuts that we have made to education has been devastating. And our bus programs are leaving us, our support systems are leaving us, and I think by us ticketing our young people about truancy, it's the easy way out for us, instead of providing them that counseling and support that they would need. All of us have gone through one time or another when we were growing up, when we needed that support and that direction in the right way. And it's so easy nowadays for our young people, for us to give them tickets and be punitive about them and set them on the wrong path for the rest of their lives. This is an easy correction. And again, Mr. Cardenas, I applaud you and congratulate you. And to our young people, I say, whenever there is something that's out there that you think is unjust, as high and as hard as that mountain may seem, think about it. Today you are here in the City Council chambers making that difference. Keep active, keep involved, and we need to create a better world for all of us, and especially for those young people that come after you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Huizar. Mr. Cardenas, to close.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Just so that everybody is clear, I'd like to read Amendment 18A. It says, in Section D, penalties for violation. A violation of this section is an infraction. The first and second violations of this section shall only be punishable by either a requirement to provide an attendance plan to the court, developed with a minor and or parent or appropriate guardian, or to participate in community service or other appropriate community or school-based program for mentoring, tutoring, credit recovery, or counseling. The minor shall not be required to perform community service or fulfill program attendance for a total time exceeding 20 hours in any given 60-day period, and the hours for performance shall occur during times other than during the minor's hours of school, attendance, or employment. Third, and subsequent violations of this section shall be punishable by the sanctions for a first or second violation, or may be punishable by a fine not exceeding $20. At any time, fines may be waived due to indigence. And remember, that $20 fine does come from other fees tacked on, could be as much as $155. Also, colleagues, I'd like to offer a friendly amendment to Motion 18A, and I'll read it into the record. After the part which says, or may be punishable by a fine not exceeding $20, it shall, in addition, read, for any individual minor. So the addition is for any individual minor. So young people, this is not a permission slip to be late. There still are consequences. However, instead of purely punishing like the current system in 4504s has us do, we will be there for you. We will be there with you. Believe it or not, an adult is going to talk to you and actually ask you a question and listen to what you have to say. That's the difference. We're going to listen to you. We're going to work with you. We're not just going to talk at you. So with that, I'd like to close by saying thank you once again for Judge Nash and his leadership in pulling all of us together. LAUSD President Monica Garcia, and also Nuri Martinez, who's been in various meetings with us, Chief Beck, and LAPD, Mr. Villegas. Please extend our thank you to the Chief and to all of your colleagues. Also the LAUSD School Police as well. They've been involved every step of the way. And the many dedicated community organizations who have been here for years, bringing this to our collective attention. And also to the most important people involved in this whole situation, I'd like to thank you, the young people, for speaking up and having us listen to you. So with that, thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. Let's give Councilman Cardenas one more round of applause. Why don't you do that? Mr. Clerk, Madam Clerk, let's open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Okay, congratulations. Congratulations, but young people, we have other work that we must do. Congratulations. This is your victory. Mr. Clerk, next item of business. Yeah, Mr. Alarcon wants you to go back to school. Mr. Clerk, next.
Actually, Mr. Wesson, on this item, Council should direct the clerk to place the actual ordinance on a future agenda, possibly next Wednesday.
All right. Then that's what we'll do, Mr. City Attorney. What's the next item, Alan?
That brings us to item number 1, called Special for Cards.
Okay. All right, guys, please exit quietly. We've got other work that we've got to do. Again, congratulations, but please exit quietly. Mr. Arnold Sachs, John Walsh, and Matt Dowd, please come forward on item 1.
John Walsh is coming up. Is that on?
I'm waiting for a little order. They have to go back to school now, where they may end up in a classroom where somebody spoon feeds them their own semen, only in L.A. I can see why some of them ditch school. Hollywood, 25 years LAUSD teacher, John Walsh. HollywoodHighlands.org. This, incidentally, is a very important item. This is item 1. This is a special district, this special assessment. This is essentially in Little Koreatown. I just want you to know that you have treated every Korean, your redistricting commission, like trash. You treat the Koreans here the way Kim Il-sung treated South Koreans. You are in an absolute war against Korea when you divide this. All in this so-called Wilshire Center Business Improvement District, we need 100% of it in one district, and we need the power of our Korean brothers and sisters to be totally consolidated. I know now that the cameras are gone, you're going to pay no attention to this item. And I want to say that recently the BID police went to our neighborhood in Hollywood and on Yucca Street and totally cleaned up a building that the LAPD had not done anything about for years. So I am a big fan now of the BID police. And I'd just like to finish HollywoodHighlands.org, Walsh Confidential. I want Eric Garcetti to email us some information on the Hollywood Walk of Fame triple rape at Yucca and Vine at 2 a.m. on February 2nd, which the media is covering up. She was screaming, she was yelling, and nothing happened. Who is she? I know she's not white, or you'd give a damn about her.
This is not on this.
I know. Okay. I'm looking for Arnold Sachs and Matt Dowd. I don't see them. So on this item, why don't we open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Next item.
Mr. President, that brings us to item number 10, called Special for Councilmember Garcetti.
Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And colleagues, this item, which is before us, is looking at the potential budget impact of our pension contribution rates and the 5-year projection of city contributions to the LACERS retirement system. And I would like to ask the CAO to come forward. I know there's a little bit of a presentation maybe that had been planned, Mr. Santana said, but let me just lay the table a little bit before and then I'll hand it over to them, because I think this has been a very important, we've had a lot of energy and excitement here in Chambers today, but this is as important as anything that we're discussing, continuing the work that we've done to reduce our pension obligations and to figure out ways that we can save our city's budget and our city services. In this, there's a number of things that have been outlined from what this council has done together with the mayor and our employees, as well as some of our pension commissioners, to reduce the amount of money that we have to pay into our pensions and to address head-on the pension crisis that we see throughout this country. These include increasing 4% payment for retiree health care among our non-sworn, 2% on our sworn, having COLAs that were restructured or delayed. Those were raises that were due to our employees, looking at decreased salaries, starting salaries that are lowered for our sworn employees, our police and firefighters, creating a new tier of benefits for new employees from our police and firefighters, looking at our health care subsidy, which gets frozen in cases where we had some bargaining units that did not ratify the other pension reform packages. And then here specifically in LACERS, the work that we've done together with LACERS to smooth, that means to actually take the volatility of the ups and downs of the investments that we have in LACERS. LACERS is the retirement fund for all of our non-sworn, non-police, non-fire employees here that are part of our city's general fund, and looking at what we can do so that we don't have such an up and down that causes us in bad years to have to fill that hole so aggressively, and in good years forget to put that away. We've increased that from 5 years to 7 years to reduce that volatility. We have a wider corridor for when we look at more catastrophic losses. We put new demographic information and reduced the assumptions that we've had in there of an 8% return to, I think, 7.75, which may still be a bit high, but it's one that we can live with, I think, for sure right now. We had a good year, it shows in this report, colleagues, in terms of our investment returns, that they were much higher than what we expected. And so some of the good news in here is that that's reduced what our expected liability was and some of our estimated contribution amounts. Now, before anybody gets too excited about that, I'm sure the CAO will reassure us that while that shows a lot of diligent and good work, Mr. Parks, your work as the budget chair, the ERC, the work that we've done on all of this to make sure that we have a city that is squared away much better than it was 2 or 3 years ago. And I think second or third, maybe only to Atlanta and a couple other cities that have really taken this on. Where are we? What do we still need to do? I've been estimating we've probably done about 60 to 70% of the work, but that last 30 to 40% is probably going to be as painful as that first 60 or 70% of the work, just because it's tougher and tougher to be able to do that. So I'll hand it over to the CAO to update people. I can think of no issue between this and healthcare that's more important to our structural work on our deficit, and see where we're at. Thank the LACERS system for its good work on these issues too. Mr. Santana.
Thank you, Councilman Garcetti. Miguel Santana, CAO. We have a very brief PowerPoint to sort of walk you through the issues, and it's important that the last chart that we have really shows you what the future is going to look like. So as Councilman Garcetti indicated, we did receive a bit of good news, in part due to a number of different efforts to try to reduce our pension costs, and many of which were led by your council. We received notice from the LACERS board that our contribution rate for next year is anticipated to be $90 million less than what we have previously projected, a reduction of about 9.5%. And this is a combine of both LACERS and the fire and police pension. On slide number 2, we talk about what really led to that. It's the most significant piece is that the stock market did really well. They both received about a 21% market value investment for both systems. Keep in mind that the window in which they look at it ends on June 30th, 2011, so it's for the fiscal year. Unfortunately, in this fiscal year, the stock market hasn't been doing as well. So one of the things that is dangerous about sort of our overall budgeting is that we rely on sort of things outside of our control sometimes to determine how well we're doing financially, and the stock market is a big one. We need to move in a direction so we're less reliant on that. The other were changes in the actuarial assumptions due to a new study that determined everything from life expectancy to the health of individuals. Adopting a multi-year phase-in for the new actuarial assumptions, that's something that we requested, and they responded to it. Reducing the medical trend inflation rate, which was helpful, and doing it over a period of time. Applying a frozen applying the frozen retiree health care subsidy, which is a policy directive that your council adopted. And then a significant piece is obviously the contributions that most employees are making towards retiree health care, 2% for sworn and 4% by the majority of city employees. There's only a handful of bargaining units that are not making that 4% contribution, including the city attorneys, as well as EAA and a few others. So what does this mean in terms of the future? If you look at this chart, when we first originally made our forecast in April of 2011, that's represented in the blue trend line over the next several years. We had projected that in fiscal year 12-13, we would have a contribution of $411 million, $456 million on 13-14, and nearly $500 million 14-15. What this new information provides us is that those trend lines have gone down. So for next year, it's closer to 248. Depending on what happens in the first scenario, should there be a zero rate of return this fiscal year, it goes up to 386 the following year and 428 14-15. If we do better in the rate of return, then it trends lower than that. And so this indicates sort of what how variable it is based on how well the stock market does. And it's a point to point out that this doesn't mean it's absolute, it will happen. These are illustrations that we requested the laser system and the fire police system to do. Unfortunately, the trend line isn't as dramatic on the fire, in part because the contribution was less, 2% towards retiree health care and a number of other issues. But again, it shows the same kind of direction. Obviously, depending on how well the stock market does, our contributions would be slightly less. And there was a difference in the phase-in. One did a 3-year phase-in versus a 5 years. So combined, if you look at, on slide number 5, we are seeing improvement, but it still also illustrates that we have challenges. The most important line, I think, if you want to be optimistic about what the stock market is going to do and you're going to assume that they're going to hit their mark every year for the future, then I would focus on the green line. And the green line would show that instead of our overall contribution being $948 million for fiscal year 12-13, it'll be $858. For 13-14, over $1 billion, and it was originally projected, and down to 998, and so on. So, as Mr. Garcetti indicated, it is positive news, but we still have a while to go before we're in the balance. This additional chart, what it shows that in the second FSR, the deficit range was reported to be between 200 and 250 million. So what this news now offers us is that the deficit is now expected to be 150 and 200 million. Now, it's important to emphasize this because it's been interesting. I just had an animated conversation about this very point, that, there seems to be an impression that we're done, that we essentially have made a lot of difficult decisions and that the future is now a lot more optimistic than it was in the past. While it's certainly true that we are in a better place than we were 3 years ago. Keep in mind, 3 years ago, our deficit was close to $500 million. We are still facing significant challenges. And as Mr. Garcetti stated, with a deficit now between 150 and 200 million, and most of the tools that we use have already been applied, then getting to a balanced budget now is harder than ever. And I could tell you where my office is working with the mayor's office today to try to figure out exactly how to balance next year's budget, and it hasn't been an easy task. So if you look at the next chart, it illustrates sort of in real hard terms what this really means. So we now could map out over the next 5 years what our expenditures are going to look like. So for 12-13, our expenditures just for employee compensation, healthcare benefits, pension contributions, and workers' compensation is expected to be $217 million, additional to what we currently have, okay? So we use this year as a base, and we're sort of adding to it what the additional expenditures will be for the future. Our revenue, assuming the anemic pace of the economy, is growing at about 2%. With that kind of growth, we're expecting an additional $88 million next year. So there's still a gap between the blue bar chart and the green one. It illustrates that our expenditures, even with this optimistic news, continues to be higher than our revenue. And unfortunately, that continues to grow in the next few years, up to the point of year 16, 17, where our expenditures are going to be close to $9.5 million, nearly $1 billion more than what we're spending today. And our revenues, assuming sort of a continual modest growth of our economy, will be close to $700 million. So a structural deficit of $300 million. And that is what is challenging. So we're still needing to do our additional work to reduce our expenditure by continue to address those four drivers: employee compensation. We adopted agreements predominantly through the coalition at the height of the boom 5 years ago. If the revenue would have continued on with the assumptions at that time, our general fund budget would be close to $5 billion. Today, it's still hovering around $4 billion. On health care benefits, most employees pay zero towards a premium. Your average person in the private sector pays 17%, 18% for an individual coverage for the cost of health care. On pension contributions, we recommend and will be presenting to you an adoption of a new tier for the civilians. We have done so already with the sworn, so that we could start hiring again and hiring at a more cost-effective rate. And workers' compensation, which is one of the biggest drivers currently towards that deficit. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Ms. Perry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Santana. So, looking forward, for example, 2013 to 2014, that's short term, and we have a lot of deferred payments here that begin to kick in, and I think that's part of what causes the blue bar to rise. So, from now until then, give us a checklist of what we have to do to be able to lower that.
The first one would be on healthcare. We're very generous as a city, and our employees certainly deserve that generosity, but it's simply not sustainable. And having the majority of our employees contribute nothing towards the cost of healthcare is not something that's going to allow us to maintain that quality of care that we all want.
Not sustainable. Now, effective now.
It's not sustainable now. It's one of the drivers of the deficit, and it's certainly not sustainable in the future. Healthcare costs go up between 7% and 10% each year. And in order to be at a point where it is sustainable, we all have to now start contributing towards that cost. And
for the edification of the public, what have we been able to achieve to date?
Currently, we have one bargaining unit, EAA, that is contributing 5% of the cost of the premium. And as a policy, this city has a goal of having everyone contribute that amount in 10%, which is still for a full family coverage. In the private sector, the average individual pays 18% of the cost of health care, and that doesn't include a family.
So
we will-
within the next year, what remains outstanding in terms of?
So we will, that piece we will be, working with our labor to try to get a contribution towards healthcare to bring it to sustainability. The second piece is a new pension tier. Part of the reason we're able to continue hiring police officers even during the worst recession is that we have a new pension tier that makes it more cost effective to hire a new police officer. We also have reduced the starting salary of a new police officer by 20%, given that other jurisdictions aren't really hiring the way we were. The city will need to start hiring again at some point. And part of the reason we have a balanced FSR today is that we have basically halted most hiring. But that is not a sustainable model either. So we need to figure out a way through a new pension tier to make it more affordable to hire people, and assuming that they're here for the duration of their careers, still receive a very lucrative pension, but one where they're perhaps paying more than current employees, as well as working here longer, recognizing that people live longer than they did in the past.
That is for people who have not yet been hired.
That is, again, for people who are currently not hired, and your council and the voters of this city voted to adopt a new pension tier for our sworn personnel, which is what we currently have. And then
one other quick question, because I'm going to run out of time, and then you can just take your time. Now, I'm looking ahead at 2014 to 2015, and I want to know if the jump has to do with deferred employee contracts on the blue bar. Is that incorporated in there too?
That includes when you mean deferred, it's sort of the deferred payments that we've. Yeah. So as part of the last round of negotiations, we were able to extend out the raises that are being given to most of our civilian employees representing the coalition. Those raises start coming in. Employees will be getting a raise next year, and the year after, and the year after that. Those bargaining units that did not support that agreement, primarily in the city attorney's office, the city attorneys received a 5.5% raise this year, and that was they preferred that than having to make the contribution to
retiree health care. And if you could just make a quick comment about sworn personnel too.
On the sworn personnel, we adopted a more modest range of raises, and the raises for next year, I believe, is 1% on July 1st, and again 1% on January 1st.
Thank you.
Okay. There are no more. Mr. Englander.
Looking at the unfunded, the projected general fund contributions to Lacers, what are we looking at right now on the unfunded obligation? What are we paying out?
Do you know off the top of your head? I don't know off the top of my head. See if Ray or you want to come up. We have a representative from. What was our least year contribution this year? It was about 400 and.
Yeah, it was about 400.
Yeah, about 400.
I just want to. I'm trying to get a sense right now. What are we paying out on the unfunded liability to the pension program Lacers right now?
Well, there are two components to the city's contribution. Part of it's toward the unfunded liability, and part of it is the yearly cost. We'd have to get the breakdown.
Can you speak a little closer?
We'd have to get the breakdown for you between what's for the current year and what's for the unfunded, but we can get you that breakdown.
What's the total?
The total contribution was in the range of $400 million for this fiscal year.
$400 million.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is that, do we project that right now? I understand that as markets are improving, investments are improving, we've already realized that some of that money now is that deficit or that gap is shrinking, or is that in fact going to be, is it projected to grow over the next few years?
With the 7-year smoothing, we're still absorbing losses from the losses that we had in 2008, and so there's still going to be some pain to work its way through the system. The good news is with our board going to 7-year smoothing instead of 5, it's projected to save the city upwards of $32 million next fiscal year. It is deferring it out to future years, but a big savings for next year.
Okay, so what I'm trying to get my hands around, though, is some folks here that we're going to be saving $32 million, and I want to understand if that's $32 million that is just $32 million in less out of pocket, where in fact that gap is growing. In other words, if we're at $400 million, you said now, and it's projected for next year to be $411 million, I believe in year 13-14, we're at a projected $456 million, in 14-15, $496 million, and then in 15-16, $534 million. So while we're saving money, if you will, because we hear savings, that cost, though, keeps going up.
According to this illustration, yes. And of course, this illustration counts on all of the assumptions that are built into it coming true. If you looked at the illustrations, as was pointed out in the CAO's report from last year, you would see that the projected contribution rate was close to 30%, when really it's coming in at 24%. So, yes, if these illustrations come true, if all of these assumptions are hit exactly as they're put into this report, then that would be the gap that you'd be looking at.
So the actual savings is more not a savings, but a reduction in the
it's
total
deferring,
percentage.
in essence, to future years.
Okay.
Yeah, I think calling it even a savings is probably it's an inaccurate way of describing.
Well, that's why I hear that, and I think right away it's misleading because people assume that we're out of the woods already. And when, if we look at it's a $32 million, or we're looking at the structural deficit going into next year at being $50 million less than what was originally projected, that's not a $50 million savings when we're still $200 million in the hole.
As long as our revenues are not at the same level as our expenditures, then we're still in the hole, and this illustration shows that we're still going to be in the hole in the next 5 years. And so changing, I mean, these numbers were a lot worse 3 years ago. Let's be clear about that. But they're still challenging. And so laying out some of the things that I presented to Ms. Perry, but also trying to identify new revenue, it's a combination of those two that will ultimately get us in the balance.
Mr. Englander, you're over. Mr. Rosendahl.
Good morning, gentlemen. Oh, just about noon now. Okay, so first of all, we came up with $90 million, right? And that $90 million, when we had a $50, $60, $70 million deficit coming into this fiscal year or somewhere in it, just quickly tell the folks how we were able to avoid and we actually brought in more revenue. What did we do right?
Well, we didn't bring new revenue. What it is, again, is that what we had projected our pension costs to be a year ago in April, the actual bills that are coming in is less, $90 million less than what we projected. And that has to do with a combination of things, much due to the fact that the market did extremely well last year at 21%. But also there are things that having our employees contribute towards retiree health care made a significant difference, as well as extending the period of time in which some of the assumptions that both the pensions and the Lacers board were looking at would be transitioned over a period of time.
Okay, as you know, since you and I have met and been together, I've been talking about pensions and health care reform. Obviously, two areas that are significant. Have we now got in place any new hires? We're not hiring, right?
We are still hiring some, but it's very minimal.
But when we hire, do we have a new set of circumstances of how one comes in?
Only on the sworn. The voters approved a new tier for sworn employees. Right. We currently do not have a new tier for civilians, and we'll be recommending one within sometime in this spring.
Okay, so we will put something in place for future hires so that we can clearly not have to go back to a present employee and say that.
Right, that is correct.
Are we looking at more pension support from us in terms of employees in a structural deficit sense for pensions and health care?
On the pension front, I think our employees, we're limited in exactly what we could do for pensions. We focused on retiree health care. We have contracts in place now that establish what that's going to look like for at least the next few years. We still believe there's some work that can be done as it relates to health care for current employees. Most employees on our civilian side don't contribute towards the premium of health care. They receive full family coverage essentially for free.
And I know you said 18% is the private sector.
For an individual.
Yeah. So what's your proposal on that?
Our proposal is, and it's something that this city has as a position, is that we should move towards this place where all employees contribute at least 10% towards premium for the current coverage that we offer, which is still would be far more generous than what we provide, what's provided.
Okay, if we did 10%, what kind of savings would we get on that?
If everyone contributed 10%, the savings would range between $24 to $28 million a year.
24 to 28 million a year. Okay, so you're going to be putting that out there for us to look at. Okay, Carmen Tutana, city attorney, feels that he should not let you sweep that $3 million plus because what he's done is this, that, and the other, and he still has his group on furlough. What was your reaction to all that?
Well, it's unfortunately that we still have furloughs in the city attorney's office. They're one of two bargaining units that voted against the agreement that we reached that would have eliminated furloughs. They voted against it twice. And so, unfortunately, that's the reality that we're saying. The city has to obtain those savings from one way, but it's not. They're the only employees outside of a few others who are not making a contribution towards retiree health care.
So if we could get that worked out with that union, it could be a different story with the city attorney's office?
Well, we would be in a position to be able to eliminate or reduce furloughs like we have the rest of the city.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. All right, on this item, let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Next.
That brings us to item 14, called special for Councilmember Parks.
Mr. Parks, item 14. Oh, Mr. Krikorian, before.
Sorry, Mr. Parks. Mr. President, if I could please ask for reconsideration of item 31. We needed to make a technical correction on the source of the settlement payments.
Okay, so let's, we can do that without objection, Mr. Clerk, or do we have to vote on it? Okay, then let's vote to reconsider item 31. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, now.
And Mr. President, I believe the city attorney will comment on the sources of funding.
Okay, now I know some of you may want to reconsider an item or something, but we've called item 14. Let's do item 14 and then, state what your wishes are, and we'll see if we can't take care of it. So now
we still need to finish item 31, Mr. President.
Oh, is it ready to? It's ready to go now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. With that said, Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you. The change in the settlement is to council authorize and direct the city attorney to pay $42,000 payable from the city attorney liability claims account, and to authorize and direct the Department of Public Works, Office of Accounting, to make a payment in the amount of $70,500 payable from the Stormwater Pollution Abatement Fund and $112,500 from the Sewer Operations and Maintenance Fund.
Okay, thank you. If you're fine with that, yes, Mr. Krikorian, on that item, open the roll, close the roll.
Sorry.
Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, that brings us to item 14. Mr. Parks.
Could I have the city staff, please? I just have 3 quick questions. This is a brand new process, and I guess it's the first that we're going with the manager. Could you just give us a little brief overview of how it differs from our prior process? And the 2 real issues I'm concerned about is how do we keep the taste of LA and local involvement as we basically go to a new configuration at the airport?
Absolutely. Mark Adams, Los Angeles World Airports. In the past, what we've done is basically directly contract with the concessionaires, have our staff do a lot of the day-to-day management, working with the concessionaires and having direct leasing basically with the companies that are providing the services there at the airport, food and beverage, retail and such. What the terminal concessions manager process does is basically put an experienced concessions manager under contract to LAWA, who that concessions manager then reaches out and contracts with the firms that will populate the various store locations in the Bradley Terminal and Terminal 2. What this does is give us more flexibility, provide us more ability to get better revenues out of the process, and also gives us just a better way to manage the process with a more experienced management team that can oversee the process. In terms of the local component, the council has spoken to us on numerous occasions about the importance of that. Our board has made that a priority in awarding, recommending the award of the contract to Westfield, and we have the reassurance of Westfield that will be, the local flavor will be incorporated. We have their commitment. We have the DBE goals in the contract of 25% for food and beverage and 20% for the retail. And our executive director has the sign-off authority over the vendors that are ultimately chosen by Westfield to populate the Bradley Terminal and Terminal 2. I think beyond that, Westfield has committed to a process, a very open process for selecting the vendors that will populate the Bradley Terminal, and I think we have their assurance, and we're confident that the local flavor will be incorporated in the new concessions.
Could you just go over briefly what the general manager's role? I guess Westfield will make recommendations, and then they have the general manager. What has the final say?
Westfield will have a process whereby first they put together a plan for how they're going to populate the concessions, and then pull together a list of potential vendors that can fit different categories, and then go through a selection process to figure out how each different space will be filled out. Then they need to present that plan to LAWA, and our executive director has the sign-off authority. So if for some reason it comes back and it doesn't meet the criteria that were laid out by our board, then we can continue to work with Westfield to make sure that the mix of stores, both in terms of what they're offering and who's there, is appropriate.
Thank you.
Mr. Rosendahl, followed by Mr. Zine.
Yes, so thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Well, we took it through the process in the committee, and we were pleased to see how Westfield stepped up to the plate in a lot of the things. Would you quickly explain what happened on the commission and how they picked them?
The commission, there were 3 proposers that we went through. Each proposer went through a very rigorous process in terms of both written proposal and interviews. Westfield was the #1 score of the 3, and I think all the 5 reviewers, including one of them was from the harbor, so it wasn't all airport people. Of the 5 proposers, I think they all had Westfield ranked #1.
Very good. Is Westfield in the room? Could they come up quickly? I'd like to hear from you. Just stand at the podium there real quickly, and right here at the podium, and introduce yourself and clearly give us the comfort level that we want, that local establishments with flavor and color are going to be part of your vendor process. Explain.
Okay. Yeah. Good afternoon. Dominic Lowe. I'm Executive Vice President for Westfield Concession Management. Just to confirm, we are fully committed to making sure that, first and foremost, we do a numerous number of outreaches to ensure that we encourage local and diverse and minority businesses, both from an owner-operated perspective and also from a brand and licensing perspective. So we're fully committed. We're a company that's been in business for 16 years. We manage over 1,000 retailers. A vast majority, maybe an average of 35% of those retailers, are actually minority and local businesses. So we are very, very used to working with local businesses and putting them into our international
Okay,
airports.
saying that, assuming my colleagues go along with this, how do they get in touch with you and get an interview process, be competitive, and get a contract with you?
Yeah, what we typically do is we use a varied amount of formats, whether it's website, we'll do public outreaches, we'll actually go to local press, we'll go through your local offices and make sure that everyone is clearly understanding where those business outreach seminars will be and encourage them to come along. We've actually already done one, which we had over 100 participants at. So, we're actively in that space now.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Mr. Zine.
To the airport, what are you doing about concession improvements at Ontario? While we're talking about concessions.
On the Ontario concessions are at this point on holdover, and we would the contracts are continuing there, and we would we don't have plans at this point in time to put them out for RFP. But right now,
no plans, you say?
There are no plans as I'm sitting here to put those out for a new RFP right now. No.
Is there any coordination between LAX and the other airports that the system operates? Or are they all separate, independent as far as any concessions?
The concessions contract Ontario has a separate concessions contract, but the same group at LAWA that manages the concessions contracts at LAX manages the concessions contracts at Ontario.
Okay, but there's no future plans to improve concessions?
No, there are plans to. There's no plans to put out a new RFP on the street for the Ontario concessions right now because the contracts are still in force there.
And this will be all the terminals or just certain terminals with the Westfield project?
This particular contract is for Terminal 2, the Bradley Terminal, including the new Bradley West portion of it, and the theme building.
And then what about the rest of the terminals?
Terminals 1, 3, and 6, they're doing the interviews, in fact, today for the concession manager contract for Terminals 1, 3, and 6, so that should be in council before too long.
Okay, and why don't we have one contract for all terminals?
We thought it would be best to, well, first of all, the Bradley Terminal and Terminal 2 are more international, so there's a slightly different slant on those. Terminals 1, 3, and 6 are more domestic terminals, and those terminals I've just mentioned are all more, are not under long-term lease to a particular airline. The Terminals 4, 5, 7, and 8, we dealt with the concession contracts in those a couple of years, back in 2010, you may recall. And those are under direct lease to the airline. So just because of the way the terminals line up slightly differently in terms of how the leasing arrangements are to the airlines and how the passenger mix is, we've split them up basically into three packages.
So we're talking basically food concessions, coffee concessions, duty free at the international terminal.
This does not include duty free. Duty free will be under a separate contract.
A separate
contract. This is food and beverage, retail, and some other services.
But duty free,
but not duty free.
That'll come in later.
The duty free will be a third contract. You'll see this year.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we have two cards on this item, and that's Mr. Arnold Sachs and Matt Dowd. I don't see Mr. Dowd, but Mr. Sachs is here.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Arnold Sachs. Quite a day for Westfield. I believe that this Westfield is the same Westfield that also won approval on items 12 and 13 regarding the development. It was item 13 and 12 and 13 regarding the development in the valley. So quite a day. This must be a subsidiary of that same Westfield License Liability Corporation. But my question, somebody mentioned that there were 5 votes for this in favor. So I was thinking about when you had the fiasco with the construction authority, the authorities to oversee the construction. That was a 5-vote deal. It was 4-1 the first time it was voted, and then they had a revote, which magically changed to 5-0 in favor of the person who lost. So the fact that there were 5 votes means absolutely nothing. In Ontario, what about addressing the fact that you're paying $4.50 per passenger more at Ontario than you are at LAWA, and the bonds that for Ontario that were issued for restructure for the new construction there, who's going to end up paying for those? Because the revenue source of revenue in Ontario is falling below the radar. And by the way, since this is a private contractor doing the outsourcing for these businesses, what does that mean for like health care benefits and the living wage ordinance that you so wholly endorse, which allows the corporations that go to work at LAWA to eliminate health care benefits for $2 more an hour? So, and those people that will be hired, will they be under the old LAWA benefits or are they under the new LAWA benefits? And a request for proposals again. Are there requests for proposals, or we remember that fiasco which was mentioned in 2010?
Thank you, Mr. Sachs.
Terminal 2, we didn't hear that.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, on this item, Mr. Clerk.
Pardon me, sir. For clarification, a committee report from the Trade, Commerce, and Tourism Committee has been distributed and is now before Council for action.
All right, so I would imagine we can just proceed with the vote at this time. So why don't we open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to reconsider item number 1 from.
Okay, forthwith on the airport item, and you want to reconsider item number 1?
Yes, sir. From yesterday's council agenda regarding the sewer facilities charge, please.
Okay, on that. Wait.
Yes. To be continued. Want to continue till Wednesday.
Oh, so
We have
okay.
to vote
So
on it first. I understand.
we have to vote on reconsideration.
Right.
So, Mr. Clerk, on item 1, the first vote is for reconsideration, correct?
That is correct, sir.
And then we'll just continue the item. All right. So we're on reconsideration. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
And you'd like to continue this until?
Wednesday, February 9th, please, Mr. President.
Okay, Mr. Clerk. Mr. Koretz.
Mr. President, I'd like to have items number 19 and 20 go forthwith.
Without objection, forthwith. Mr. Clerk, that brings us where?
Mr. President, for clarification, just item 1 from yesterday, Council File number 10, 1947, is now continued to Wednesday, February 29. That now brings us...
And that's regarding the sewer facilities charge.
That now brings us to item 15, called Special for Cards.
Okay. Mr. Sachs, you called this item special. Why don't you come forward? And Matt Dowd, I don't see Mr. Dowd. I do see Mr. Sachs.
Yeah, thank you. Your dog and pony show you had ran so long, I left before I could talk on item number 1 and 15 and 16.
Would you speak to this item?
I will speak to the items. This item is a bid. And I was looking at the conditions imposed on item number 1, 3, and item 15 and 16. And condition number 3 says the assessments are not taxes, so the district qualifies for exemption from Prop 26. But there is no condition like that for the Wilshire, the number 1 bid, the Wilshire Center Business Improvement District. And also, the city clerk's contract is with the Wilmington Chamber of Commerce for this one. On item number 1, the city contract is with the Wilshire Chamber Business Improvement Committee, a nonprofit for administration, and there's no cost of administration for this one here, whereas number 1, city costs for administration are $15,000, representing 2% of the direct billing of the money collected by the bid. There's no cost in number 15 and no cost in number 16, and there's nothing regarding an advisory board. Now, when you look at this and you say item number 1 was $15,000, and you say, well, let's say that was 5%, then the district, the business improvement district, is collecting $330,000. So if you use the same math at item 15, that could be $330,000, but there's no funding listed here. So how does the public really know how much money is being talked about here? In item 16, it's the same thing. In item 1, there's no assessments for city-owned property, but the city can vote to create the business improvement district. And there's nothing saying anything about that in item number 15 or item number 16. So why isn't that included? I know it's all the same, but it's different. And shouldn't the public have some idea of what you're talking about? No, because we're open and transparent.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, on that item, let's open the roll. Madam Clerk, let's close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, forthwith, and what's next?
That brings us to item 17, called Special for Cards.
Okay, I don't have, well, here it is. This was held special for Zumadog, who I do not see, and Michael Carrion, I don't see him either. So on this item, Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote?
13 ayes.
Mr. Clerk, next.
That brings us to item 21, called Special for Cards.
Mr. Sachs and Mr. John Walsh.
Yes, thank you again, Arnold Sachs. I held this only because it's another math problem. So your current allocation of $1,077,000 is added into the total of $7 million to become a total of $7,300,000. Your contracts, your FSC contract from fiscal year January 1st, 2012, January 1st to March 31st is $847,000. And from April 1st, 2013, April 1st to December is $4,199,000. So those two total up to $5 million. The rest of the program totals up to $2 million. So where is the current allocation of money going as far as any of these programs to be administered? Well, we don't know. So this, again, is government funding that comes to the city that isn't spent. We had CDBG funds come to the county that wasn't spent. But we hear so many complaints from the city councilmen that Washington is not giving us a fair share of money. But when the city gets a hold of money, they don't spend it fairly. We have the same problem with redevelopment money. There was a rollover of over $4 million, $400 million. How come? That's property tax money. Why wasn't it spent? Why isn't it allocated? What's going on? We don't know. Don't worry. We got condoms for adult films, and we got no truants for school, and we're taking care of that. But as far as $12 million, just give or take a couple of $100,000, we're open and transparent regarding.
Mr. Walsh.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. I don't ask questions. I give you the hidden answers. What I want to explain to the people out there who are watching what these block grants are. This is money. This is about 30 years ago. Reagan started this. It comes to the city or the county, and then they decide how to spend it with wide parameters, which has worked. It has worked. But I want to point out that the money that used to go, block grant money, would then go to the CRA, and then you wouldn't have control over it. The CRA would. Now we have a system where all the block grant money that comes to the city and the county will be spent by you. And incidentally, I trust you more than I trusted the the CRA board. That's not saying much, but it's true. And we'll get money for Hollywood, where we had the triple rape at Hollywood and Yucca, Vine and Yucca. I want information about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. So on Mr. Clerk, on this item, let's open the roll, Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
Okay, what would be next?
Item 22 called special for cards.
Okay, I have one card on 22. It's from Mr. Walsh. Would you? He passes on that item. Let's, Madam Clerk, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
Next.
Item 23 called special for cards.
Now it's called special by Mr. Sachs, but he's out of time, is my understanding. So can we open the roll, Madam Clerk, on this item? Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
Okay, next item.
Item 24 called special for Councilmember Koretz.
Mr. Koretz.
I might advise, by the way, that motion 24A, Koretz-Garcetti, has been distributed and is before council for its consideration.
Okay, Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Agnes Woods died on July 24, 2009, and was a CD4 resident. And she graciously donated $112,000 to the North Central Animal Shelter. This is around a quarter of the net proceeds of her estate. The administrative code requires that the City Council and Mayor officially accept this donation. However, before the Council can act, we must first adopt the amending motion that's been circulated in order to provide a technical correction for controller instructions to ensure the donation from Agnes Woods' estate will be dispersed for needs at the North Central Animal Shelter in accordance with her wishes. I therefore move that the City, with its thanks, accept this bequest from Ms. Wood upon the adoption of my amending motion 24A.
Thank you, Mr. Koretz. Mr. Clerk, we can proceed with the vote on this item now. So, Madam Clerk, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
Okay, what's the next item, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. President, that brings us to item 27. It's a matter scheduled for closed session.
Okay. Well, why don't we have sergeants clear the... Oh, we do? One moment, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Walsh.
This is the most important item on the agenda, okay? The press, they're sleeping. This is the most important. Do you understand what they're going to vote on? They try to go in the back. This is a settlement with Morgan Stanley and the Bank of America for practically no money, no reporters doing. Only place you can find out about this, HollywoodHighlands.org. Read it. Do your homework. They won't tell us exactly what the settlement is. Municipal, this is concerns municipal derivatives and antitrust litigation. This is a backroom deal while these people up here, all of them, men and women, are grabbing their ankles and ducking down for Morgan Stanley, Bank of America. Why don't we have under the law, you can have a thorough discussion of this issue and then go in the back room. But you're not. You're going in the back room and giving in to Wall Street. That's what you're doing. And the only person out of the 4 million people that live in the city of Los Angeles who are blowing the whistle on this, little Ricky isn't doing anything. Another, Mr. Parks, so well, we know he's in poor health, so he gets a pass. Zine, Rosendahl gets it's a no-brainer. I'm telling you right now, I want the press to, in fact, find out what's happening when they come out. HollywoodHighlands.org, Walsh Confidential, they're giving in to Wall Street in the back room for a peanut settlement.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Krikorian, it's my understanding that we might have some transportation issues where it relates to council.
That's my understanding as well, Mr. President. When we are prepared to go into closed session, we might hear from the City Attorney's Office and then hopefully by the time that report is done, outside counsel will be here to answer any questions and provide additional report on this matter.
Okay, so sergeants, let's clear the chambers.
And would rather run the risk of being picked up by the police and ticketed for violation of curfew. However, they are more likely to run into the many real dangers that face us every time we go out at night.
We have found that kids out so late are normally caught up in violence, traffic accidents, and that's no good. Some of these kids still they're not aware of the law, and they're not educated on it.
Drinking, drugs, sexual predators, and gang-related activities are only few of the dangers we face regardless of how young or old you are. If you are under the age of 18, this law applies to you. What happens if you are caught? You will be taken to the station where the ticket is written out to you, and your parent or guardian are called to pick you up. If your parent cannot pick you up, you will be placed into a protective custody or sent to a juvenile facility.
Guardian at something like an event such as Grill Beach.
The guardian is not just someone appointed to by the parents. A guardian is someone appointed by the courts.
You can legally stay out late if you are participating in a religious, educational, or political activity, accompanied by a parent or guardian, going to or from their place of employment, responding to some type of emergency, returning home from school, cultural, or recreation activity.
And that's our message, is not only enforcing the curfew violation, but also educating them that they need to stay home and stay safe.
The curfew laws are not just here to protect us, they're here to protect the safety of everyone in our community.
property theft has spiked in the area the past year due to easy access for thieves. Almost 80% of car theft occurs because of unlocked doors. Locking your doors takes a matter of seconds and can become so routine that you may forget whether you locked your doors or not. But it's worth the effort to double check. The more successful thieves are at taking items out of a car, the more chances they are going to come back to that area. Don't let our town be that area. One simple precaution is to hide or cover any valuable items when leaving your car unattended. Simple actions like these can prevent you from becoming a victim of property theft. The Los Angeles Police Department would like you to remember, lock it or lose it.
investigating a series of bizarre and disturbing attacks that have left children in cities from coast to coast injured and fearing for their safety. As Global's Anna Gabauer tells us, the young victims were targeted simply because of the color of their hair.
They better, and while we begin with an Eyewitness News exclusive disturbing video of a gay man being beaten in Queens.
The individual was attacked simply for his orientation, and we're just not going to tolerate it.
The word hate is just unexcusable. It's a word that shouldn't be used, and to hate somebody for the color of their skin is just not right.
It creates fear among all of the community members.
I think it's wrong how people discriminate against others just because of the way they prefer people, as in gays or just their skin color. It's wrong, and something needs to be done. A hate crime is any criminal act directed against a person based on the victim's actual or perceived nationality, religion, sexual orientation, disability, gender, and especially race. Examples of hate crimes include acts which result in injury even if the injury is slight, threats of violence that look like they can be carried out, acts which result in property damage, any criminal act or attempted criminal act, including property damage directed against public or private agencies.
The suspect can spend up to 1 year in jail, and if it's a felony, it could either be between 2 and 4 years for a prison sentence.
If you believe a hate crime has occurred or will occur, you are very much encouraged to contact the Los Angeles Police Department or the We Tip hotline. Public cooperation is often essential in solving hate crimes. We Tip hotline, 909-987-5005.
never had a traffic accident like this before, where a teenager has decided to run from the police and been struck by a motor vehicle.
5859 TF 5060, watch 3. 5060.
Curfew laws restrict the right of juveniles to be outdoors or in the public places after 10 p.m. until sunrise the next day. Such laws aim to establish a safer community and to better protect people from becoming victims of crimes or becoming involved in a crime. Most people don't agree with our curfew laws and would rather run the risk of being picked up by the police and ticketed for violation of curfew. However, they are more likely to run into the many real dangers that face us every time we go out at night.
We have found that kids out so late are normally caught up in violence, traffic accidents, and that's no good. Some of these kids still they're not aware of the law, and they're not educated on it.
Drinking, drugs, sexual predators, and gang-related activities are only few of the dangers we face regardless of how young or old you are. If you are under the age of 18, this law applies to you. What happens if you are caught? You will be taken to the station where the ticket is written out to you and your parent or guardian are called to pick you up. If your parent cannot pick you up, you will be placed into a protective custody or sent to a juvenile facility.
Guardian at something like an event such as Thrill Beach.
The guardian is not just someone appointed to by the parents. A guardian is someone appointed by the courts.
You can legally stay out late if you are participating in a religious, educational, or political activity, accompanied by a parent or guardian, going to or from their place of employment, responding to some type of emergency, returning home from school, cultural, or recreation activity.
And that's our message, is not only enforcing the curfew violation, but also educating them that they need to stay home and stay safe.
The curfew laws are not just here to protect us, they are here to protect the safety of everyone in our community.
property theft has spiked in the area the past year due to easy access for thieves. Almost 80% of car theft occurs because of unlocked doors. Locking your doors takes a matter of seconds and can become so routine that you may forget whether you locked your doors or not. But it's worth the effort to double check. The more successful thieves are at taking items out of a car, the more chances they are going to come back to that area. Don't let our town be that area. One simple precaution is to hide or cover any valuable items when leaving your car unattended. Simple actions like these can prevent you from becoming a victim of property theft. The Los Angeles Police Department would like you to remember, lock it or lose it.
Good afternoon, Los Angeles. It's 1:20. We're still back live. Pardon me?
We have no leadership team in the chambers?
Who's in the chair, Mr.?
Wait, hold on a second. We went back on live. Are we still in executive? So let's go back into executive session. We're going back to executive session. All right. Okay. Thank you. We will remain in open session. No announcements required. Thank you, ladies. Thank you. All right, Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
Mr. President, Council has motions for posting and referral.
Post and referred.
The desk is clear.
The desk is clear. Announcements, colleagues. Anyone announcements? No one announcements. Adjourning motions. Anyone with adjourning motions? See no adjourning motions. This concludes this meeting of the Los Angeles City Council. We will return on Friday. Have a good afternoon, Los Angeles.
LA City View Channel 35. Your city, your channel.
We now join our scheduled program in progress.